consider a garden in the final days of autumn. There is a quiet wisdom in the air, a gentle surrender. The leaves, in their last act, do not cling to the branches in fear, but offer a final blaze of glory, a riot of gold and crimson and amber. They do not die a tragic death. They perform a graceful release, letting go to become part of the earth once more. The garden is not sad. It is not empty. It is serene, complete, resting in a state of fulfillment. This is the quiet dignity of a cycle completed, a beauty that only comes with maturity, with the deep knowing of when it is time to let go. Yet for us, as we enter the autumn of our own lives, the season after 60, we often feel a different kind of chill in the air. We are taught to admire the spring of youth, the vibrant summer of our working years, but the autumn feels like an ending we are meant to resist. Society whispers a constant narrative of productivity, of forward momentum, of usefulness. And so, when the career ends, when the children have built their own lives, when the body no longer moves with the same effortless ease, a silent anxiety can begin to creep in. We look in the mirror and see a stranger. We look into the past and are haunted by the ghosts of what might have been, the weight of our memories, the sting of our regrets. The quiet fear of time running out can become a heavy cloak. We feel as though we are standing on a shore, watching the great ship of life sail on without us. But what if this season of life is not an epilogue, but the most profound chapter of all? What if the wisdom of the autumn garden holds a secret for us? What if there is a way to not fight the current, but to merge with it, to find a deep and abiding peace not in spite of the changes, but because of them? This is not a call to a new belief or a complex religion. It is an invitation to explore a timeless art of living, a set of spiritual tools and perspectives preserved for centuries within the quiet heart of Zen wisdom. It is a path to discovering that peace is not something you acquire from the outside world, but something you return to, something that has been waiting patiently within you all along, beneath the noise and the struggle. It is the path to learning how to let go as gracefully as a leaf, and in that release, to find not an ending, but a true and lasting freedom. The final chapter of a great book is not an afterthought. It is not a hurried summary written simply to tie up loose ends. The final chapter is where the themes converge, where the deepest meaning is revealed, where the entire journey finds its ultimate significance. It is the summit, the peak from which the whole landscape of the story can finally be understood in its entirety. And yet, in the culture we inhabit, we are taught to view the final chapter of our own lives as something less, as an epilogue at best. We are conditioned by a world that worships at the altar of the new, the fast, the young. It is a world that sees value in the bud, but not in the fully blossomed flower just before it returns to the earth. It sees strength in the sapling, but overlooks the profound resilience of the ancient, gnarled oak that has weathered 1,000 storms. This relentless cultural narrative tells us, in subtle and not so subtle ways, that to age is to diminish. It equates wrinkles with decay, slowness with obsolescence, and the wisdom of experience with being out of touch. We are made to feel like old photographs in a digital world, like handwritten letters in an age of instant messages. The pressure is to stay young, to look young, to act young, to defy the natural, graceful, and inevitable flow of life itself. And in this resistance, in this fight against time, we create a deep and unnecessary suffering for ourselves. We begin to mourn the person we were, instead of celebrating the person we have become. But the wisdom of Zen invites us to stop, to breathe, and to gently, lovingly question this entire premise. It asks us to consider a radical, and yet deeply natural, alternative. That this period of life, the years after 60, is not a gentle slope downwards into irrelevance. It is the slow, steady, and majestic ascent to a summit, a peak of understanding that is utterly inaccessible to the young, no matter how clever or ambitious they may be. Think of your life not as a dwindling resource, but as a vast and fertile field that you have been tending for decades. The joys you have known, the sorrows you have endured, the stunning victories and the crushing defeats, the love you have given and received, the mistakes you have made, and the lessons you have learned. All of it, every single moment, has been enriching this field. Now is not the time to look back with regret at the crops that failed, or the seasons of drought. Now is the time of the harvest. It is the time to gather the incredible bounty of wisdom that your unique and unrepeatable life has produced. This wisdom is not the kind found in books or lectures. It is not intellectual. It is not a collection of facts or theories. It is a deep, embodied knowing. It is the quiet understanding of human nature that can only come from having navigated the complex currents of relationships for a lifetime. It is the patience that is born only from having waited for deep wounds to heal. It is the compassion that blossoms only from having known your own fallibility, your own vulnerability, your own need for grace. A younger person may know the rules of the game of life, but you understand the nature of the game itself. You know that winning and losing are two sides of the same coin. You know that joy and sorrow are not enemies, but intimate companions. You know that the most profound strength often looks like surrender. This is not a diminishment. This is an enrichment of almost unimaginable proportions. Every line on your face is a map of a journey taken. Every silver hair is a testament to a challenge met. To wish them away is to wish away the very wisdom they represent. This ripening of understanding is what we can call spiritual maturity. The term spiritual here has nothing to do with dogma or religion. It points to the deepest dimension of your being, the core of your awareness. Spiritual maturity is the natural outcome of a life lived with a certain quality of attention. It is the gradual shift from being violently tossed about by the waves of life to learning how to surf them with a sense of balance and even joy. It is the ability to watch your own thoughts and emotions arise and pass away without being enslaved by them. It is the capacity to feel pain, both physical and emotional, without letting that pain define your entire existence. A spiritually mature person can hold life's great paradoxes in their heart without needing to solve them. They can be both sad and grateful, both serious and lighthearted, both deeply engaged and peacefully detached. They no longer see the world in rigid categories of black and white, good and evil, right and wrong. Instead, they see a complex and beautiful tapestry of causes and conditions, of light and shadow interweaving. This is the view from the summit. From here, you do not see the winding, confusing path of your past as a series of wrong turns. You see it as the only path that could have possibly led you to this high vantage point. Every twist, every detour was necessary. From this peak, the heart naturally fills with a quiet sense of compassion for yourself and for all others who are still struggling in the valleys below. There is an old story of a master potter, a man who had spent his entire life at the wheel. In his youth, his work was celebrated for its technical perfection. His pots were symmetrical, flawless, and strong. He won awards and his fame spread. Yet, as he grew older, he found himself dissatisfied. His perfect pots felt cold. They lacked a soul. As he entered his 70s and 80s, his hands grew gnarled with arthritis. His eyesight began to fail. He could no longer produce the technically perfect works of his youth. And yet, it was in this period that he created his greatest masterpieces. He no longer fought the clay, imposing his will upon it. He listened to it. He followed its nature. He moved with an economy of motion, a deep intuition born from 100,000 hours of practice. The bowls and vases he made were no longer perfectly symmetrical. They might have a slight wobble, an unexpected curve, the faint imprint of his own aged knuckle, but they were alive. They had warmth. They had character. They felt as though they had grown from the earth itself. Visitors would come to his studio and be mesmerized by these later works, and he would simply smile and say, "It took me a lifetime to learn how to get out of the way, so the pot could make itself." This is the journey into our later years. We let go of the need for perfection. We embrace our own beautiful imperfections, the marks of a life fully lived. We stop trying to impose our will on life, and we learn to move in harmony with it. This leads to the most profound liberation of all, the freedom to live for yourself. For 60 or more years, your life has likely been defined by your roles. You were a son or a daughter, a student, an employee or an employer, a spouse, a parent, a caregiver. These roles brought purpose and meaning, but they also created a kind of cage, a set of expectations that you had to fulfill. To retire, to see your children become independent, can feel like a terrifying loss of identity. The question echoes in the quiet hours. If I am not my job, if I am not a caregiver, then who am I? Zen wisdom gently suggests that this is not a crisis, but an opportunity. It is the shedding of masks, the peeling away of labels that were never your true self to begin with. For the first time, you have the sacred opportunity to meet the person who has been living underneath those roles all along. You have the time and the space to ask the most important questions. What brings me a sense of quiet joy? Not what earns me applause. What nourishes my soul? Not what fills my bank account. What do I love to do, simply for the love of doing it? This is not an act of selfishness. It is an act of profound self-reclamation. It is about tending to your own inner garden, not to impress the neighbors, but for the simple, sacred pleasure of seeing things grow. This final chapter is not an epilogue. It is the story of you, finally meeting you. It is the ascent to the summit of your own being, from where the view is clear, vast, and breathtakingly peaceful. And it is from this high place of clarity that we can now turn our gaze to the landscape of our past, not to get lost in it, but to understand it with a new and compassionate wisdom. From the high summit of our later years, we can look back upon the entire landscape of our life. It stretches out behind us, a vast and intricate territory of sunlight and shadow. This landscape is the past. For many, it is a place of great and complicated power. It can be a source of warmth and pride, but it can also be a haunted land, a place of sharp edges and lingering ghosts that reach into our present and disturb our peace. The Zen approach to this powerful territory is one of great wisdom and gentleness. It teaches us to see the past not as a prison in which we are condemned to live, but as a garden. It is your garden, planted by you over the course of a lifetime. No one else has one exactly like it. In some corners of this garden, there are beautiful flowers of joyful memories, moments of love, triumph, and connection that still radiate a gentle fragrance. In other areas, there may be tangled thickets of regret, stubborn weeds of resentment, and the sharp thorns of painful experiences that can still wound us if we are not careful. The fundamental mistake we make in relating to this garden is twofold. Some of us, fearing the thorns and the weeds, try to lock the gate and throw away the key. We suppress the memories. We refuse to look back. We pretend that the garden does not exist, but the past cannot be walled off. Its roots run deep beneath the surface of our present, and they will affect the ground we stand on whether we acknowledge them or not. The other mistake is to do the opposite. We become so captivated or so tormented by the garden of our past that we build a house right in the middle of it. We live there, day in and day out, endlessly replaying old scenes, watering the weeds of regret with our tears, or polishing the statues of our former glories. We become a ghost in our own museum. The wise path is that of the gardener. The gardener does not live in the garden, but they do not abandon it either. They understand that their home is in the present moment, but they know the importance of visiting the garden, of tending to it with care and attention. They can walk among the flowers and appreciate their beauty without trying to recreate them. And they can approach the weeds and thorns with skill and compassion, not to violently rip them out, but to gently loosen their hold on the soil, so that the garden can become a place of peace, rather than a source of pain. The first skill of the wise gardener is to learn the crucial difference between two ways of visiting the past: reminiscing and ruminating. On the surface, they may look similar, as both involve thinking about what has gone before, but in their essence, they are worlds apart, and one leads to warmth, while the other leads to suffering. Reminiscing is a gentle and conscious act. It is like taking a beloved photo album from the shelf on a quiet afternoon. You turn the pages, and a memory arises, the memory of a wedding day, a child's first steps, a friendship that nourished you. You feel the warmth of that memory in your heart, a sweet echo of the joy you once felt. You smile. You feel a sense of gratitude for the journey. Then, you gently close the book and place it back on the shelf, returning your full attention to the present moment, perhaps feeling a little richer for the visit. Reminiscing is nourishing. It honors our history and connects us to the threads of love and happiness that have run through our lives. Ruminating, on the other hand, is a compulsive and painful trap. It is not like choosing to look at a photo album. It is like being locked in a dark room with a single, disturbing image projected on the wall. Over and over again, the mind gets stuck in a loop, chewing on an old grievance, a past failure, a painful humiliation. It endlessly rehearses the scripts of what you should have said, what they should have done, if only things had been different. This is not a voluntary process. It feels like the mind has a mind of its own, dragging you back to the scene of the crime against your will. Unlike reminiscing, ruminating offers no warmth, no nourishment. It is a form of self-torment. It deepens the grooves of pain in the brain, making the toxic thoughts and feelings even more automatic in the future. It poisons the present moment, casting a dark shadow over whatever is happening right now. The first task of the gardener is to notice, with gentle awareness, which of these two activities you are engaged in. When you find yourself thinking of the past, simply ask, is this nourishing me, or is this depleting me? Is this bringing warmth to my heart, or a knot to my stomach? This simple act of noticing is the beginning of taking your power back. Once you can see the difference, you need a tool for dealing with the weeds of rumination when they inevitably sprout. The most powerful tool the Zen tradition offers is the practice of non-judgmental observation. The core of this practice lies in understanding a simple but profound truth. You are not your memories. You are the awareness in which the memories appear. The classic metaphor is that of the sky and the clouds. Your true nature, your awareness, is like the vast, open, peaceful blue sky. It is always there, fundamentally untouched and serene. Memories, thoughts, and emotions, especially the difficult ones, are like clouds. They drift into the sky of your awareness. Some are light and fluffy, others are dark and stormy. But they are all just clouds. They are temporary weather patterns. They are not the sky itself. Our suffering comes from forgetting that we are the sky and believing that we are the storm cloud. The practice, then, is to cultivate the perspective of the sky. When a difficult memory arises, a cloud of regret or anger drifts in. You do not have to become the cloud. You do not have to fight it or try to push it away, as this only gives it more energy. Instead, you can simply notice it. You can say to yourself, here is the memory of that financial loss, or here is the feeling of sadness about that broken friendship. You label it gently. This is a memory. This is a thought. This is a feeling. You observe it without getting caught in the story. You might even notice where the memory lives in your body. Does it create a tightness in your chest, a hollowness in your stomach? By bringing your attention to the pure physical sensation, you further unhook yourself from the narrative. You are not judging the cloud. You are not condemning it. You are not identifying with it. You are simply allowing it to be what it is, a temporary formation passing through the vast sky of your awareness. In doing this, you create a space, a small gap of freedom between you and the memory, and in that space, peace can begin to grow. There is a famous Zen story that perfectly illustrates this. Two monks, one senior and one junior, were on a long journey. They came to a river that was swollen from heavy rains. On the bank stood a beautiful young woman in fine silk robes, distressed because she could not cross without ruining her clothes. Without a word, the senior monk walked over to her, hoisted her onto his back, carried her across the churning water, and set her down gently on the other side. She thanked him, and he simply nodded and continued on his way. The junior monk followed, his mind in a state of turmoil. He was scandalized. Their monastic vows strictly forbade them from touching a woman. How could his master have so flagrantly broken such a sacred rule? For the next several hours, as they walked in silence, the junior monk seethed. He replayed the scene in his mind again and again, his anger and confusion growing with every step. Finally, he could bear it no longer. He burst out, "Master, how could you do that? You know we are not permitted to touch women, yet you carried that one across the river." The senior monk looked at his companion with a calm, compassionate expression. "Oh, her?" he said. "I left her by the river hours ago. Are you still carrying her?" This story reveals a profound truth about our minds. The actual event of carrying the woman was brief and is long past. The senior monk, living in the present, put her down and moved on. The junior monk, however, picked her up in his mind and has been carrying her ever since. Growing more and more exhausted by the burden, we must ask ourselves, what are the women we are still carrying? What old injustices? What past failures? What ancient resentments are we still hauling on our backs, long after the events themselves have vanished into time? The final, and perhaps most courageous, act of the wise gardener is to practice forgiveness. This is the tool that can truly pull the most stubborn weeds of regret and resentment out by the roots. For many, the idea of forgiveness, especially self-forgiveness, feels impossible. We feel we don't deserve it. We believe that holding on to self-blame is a way of honoring the gravity of our past mistakes. But Zen wisdom reveals that holding on to self-blame does not change the past one single bit. It only ensures that the suffering of the past continues to poison the present. It is like drinking a cup of poison yourself and hoping the person you were 20 years ago will be harmed by it. The only person who suffers is the one drinking the poison right now, and that is you. Forgiveness, then, is not an act of condoning what happened. It is not saying that what you did was okay. It is an act of profound compassion for the person who is here now. It is the loving decision to stop punishing your present self for the ignorance of your past self. A simple and powerful practice is to place a hand over your own heart, take a slow breath, and say, silently or aloud, "I did the best I could with the knowledge and understanding I had at the time." This statement holds both accountability and compassion. It acknowledges that perhaps now, from the summit of your wisdom, you would have acted differently. But it also honors the truth that at that moment in the past, you were a different person, with a different level of awareness. Forgiveness is not a one-time magic wand. It is a practice. Every time a weed of self-recrimination sprouts in the garden, you gently meet it with this compassionate understanding. You are tending your garden. You are liberating your present from the chains of your past. By doing so, the garden of what was ceases to be a battleground and becomes what it was always meant to be, a quiet, peaceful landscape that you can visit with wisdom, but where you no longer need to live. Your hands, your heart, your attention are now free for the only place where life truly unfolds, this very moment. Having tended to the garden of the past, we free ourselves from a heavy burden. We learn to visit our memories with wisdom and compassion, but we no longer live there. This act of liberation brings us to the doorstep of the only time and place where life is ever actually lived, the only reality we can ever truly experience, the present moment. Yet, for most of us, inhabiting the present is like trying to hold a handful of water. It constantly slips through our fingers. Our minds, trained by decades of habit, are master time travelers. They have two favorite destinations, two phantom realms where they spend most of their waking hours. The past, which is gone forever, and the future, which does not yet exist. When the mind travels to the past, it either becomes a curator in a museum of old glories, trying to relive moments that can never be recaptured, or it becomes a prosecutor in a courtroom of old grievances, endlessly trying a case that has long been closed. When it travels to the future, it becomes an architect of anxiety, building elaborate structures of worry about health, finances, family, and the great unknown of what lies ahead. This constant mental time travel is the hidden engine of our discontent. The vast majority of our stress, our anxiety, our sadness, does not come from the reality of the present moment itself. It comes from our thoughts about a past we cannot change and a future we cannot control. We are rarely suffering from what is actually happening. We are suffering from the stories our minds are telling us about it. The gift of Zen is that it offers us a way back home. It provides a simple, direct, and profoundly effective way to step out of the phantom worlds of past and future and to arrive fully in the vibrant reality of the now. The anchor that brings us home, the tool that returns the time-traveling mind to its rightful place, is the breath. The breath is a miracle we carry with us every moment, yet mostly ignore. It has one magical property. It can only ever happen in the present. You cannot take a breath yesterday. You cannot take a breath tomorrow. To be aware of your breathing is to be anchored in the here and now. This is the foundation of mindfulness meditation, a practice of radical simplicity. You do not need anything special to begin. Simply find a place where you can sit comfortably, perhaps in a chair with your feet flat on the floor and your back straight but not stiff. You can gently close your eyes or lower your gaze to a point on the floor in front of you. Then, you simply bring your attention to the sensation of your breathing. You are not trying to control it, to make it deeper or slower. You are just feeling it as it is. You might notice the cool sensation of the air entering your nostrils and the warmer sensation of the air leaving. You might bring your attention to the gentle rise of your chest and abdomen on the in-breath and the subtle fall on the out-breath. Choose one spot and rest your attention there, as if it were the most fascinating thing in the universe. Now, what will happen, guaranteed, is that your mind will wander. A thought will arise, a worry, a memory, a plan. It will hook your attention and carry you away. You might be gone for seconds or for minutes. This is not a failure. This is not a mistake. This is simply what minds do. The practice, the real work of the meditation, happens in the moment you realize you have wandered. In that moment of realizing, you have already woken up. And then, with the gentleness you might use to guide a lost child back home, you simply, kindly, and without any judgment, escort your attention back to the breath. You may have to do this 5 times, or 50 times, or 500 times in a single sitting. It does not matter. Every single time you return, you are strengthening the muscle of mindfulness. You are carving a new neural pathway in your brain, the pathway of returning to the present. You are coming home. While setting aside time for formal sitting practice is immensely beneficial, the true goal of Zen is not to be mindful for 20 minutes a day, but to weave mindfulness into the very fabric of your life. The distinction between meditation time and the rest of life begins to dissolve. Every moment becomes an opportunity to practice, to wake up. Consider the simple act of drinking a cup of tea or coffee. How often do we do this on autopilot, our minds a million miles away, barely even tasting the liquid? A mindful cup of tea is a completely different experience. As you prepare it, notice the sounds, the smells. As you hold the cup, feel its warmth and weight in your hands. See the color of the tea, the steam rising from its surface. Before you take a sip, take in its aroma. And when you do drink, do so slowly. Taste it. Really taste it. Follow the sensation of warmth as it spreads from your mouth down into your body. For these few minutes, your entire universe is this cup of tea. You are not solving the world's problems or worrying about your next appointment. You are simply, fully, with your tea. This practice can be extended to anything. When you wash the dishes, instead of rushing through a chore you dislike, you can turn it into a meditation. Feel the warmth of the water on your skin, the slippery texture of the soap, the satisfying weight of a clean plate in your hands. Listen to the sound of the water. When you take a walk, feel the solid earth beneath your feet with each step. Feel the air on your skin. Notice the quality of the light. Listen to the symphony of sounds around you without needing to label them. You are not walking to get somewhere. You are walking simply to walk. By bringing this quality of gentle, open attention to the mundane moments of our lives, we transform them. Chores become rituals. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. Life ceases to be a series of tasks to be completed and becomes a series of moments to be lived. There is a classic Zen story that captures the essence of this teaching with stark and beautiful clarity. A man is walking through the mountains when he is suddenly chased by a ferocious tiger. He runs as fast as he can, but the tiger is gaining on him. He comes to the edge of a great cliff. His only escape is to grab hold of a thick vine and scramble down the cliff face. As he hangs there, suspended between the sky and the chasm below, he looks up and sees the snarling tiger at the cliff's edge. He looks down, and to his horror, he sees another tiger waiting for him on the ground below. He is trapped. Then, out of a crevice in the cliff wall, he sees 2 mice, one white and one black, who begin to systematically gnaw on the vine he is clinging to. He knows that at any moment, the vine will snap. His situation is utterly hopeless. In that moment of complete despair, he glances to the side and sees, growing from the cliff face, a single, wild strawberry, glowing red in the sunlight. With his free hand, he reaches out, plucks the strawberry, and puts it in his mouth. The story ends with a single line, "How sweet it tasted." This story is a powerful metaphor for our lives. The tiger behind us is the past we are fleeing. The tiger below is the future we dread. The vine is our life, and the 2 mice, black and white, are night and day, steadily eating away at our time. In the midst of this precarious situation, we have a choice. We can spend our remaining moments consumed by the terror of the tigers and the mice, or we can notice the strawberry. The strawberry is the present moment. It is the simple gift of life that is always available to us, right here, right now, no matter how dire our circumstances may seem. Our lives are filled with these strawberries, a warm cup of tea, the smile of a loved one, the beauty of a sunset, the feeling of our own breath. But we are often so lost in our fears of the past and future that we fail to even notice them, let alone taste their sweetness. For those of us in the later chapters of life, this teaching carries a special poignancy and a special gift. For much of our lives, we were in a rush. We had careers to build, deadlines to meet, children to raise, mortgages to pay. Life was lived at a frantic pace, and the present moment was often just a stepping stone to get to the next thing. The natural slowing down that comes with age and retirement can feel like a loss if we are still clinging to the values of our former, faster life. But from a Zen perspective, this slowing down is a profound blessing. It is a sacred invitation from life itself to finally change our rhythm. It is the opportunity to stop being a frantic tourist in your own life, rushing from one site to the next, taking pictures of everything but truly seeing nothing. It is the invitation to become a resident. A resident finds a bench in the park and simply sits, absorbing the life that unfolds around them. A resident has time. They can savor their meals. They can take long walks with no destination. They can sit in silence and watch the clouds drift by. This gift of time, this gift of slowness, allows the deep, subtle beauty of the ordinary world to finally reveal itself. You begin to notice the intricate patterns on a leaf, the way the light changes in the late afternoon, the sound of rain on the roof. This is not a withdrawal from life. It is the deepest possible engagement with it. It is tasting the strawberry. Of course, the strawberry is not always sweet. Sometimes the present moment is filled with difficulty, with pain, with grief. And so the question naturally arises: how do we stay present with a reality that is unpleasant or even unbearable? This leads us to the next essential skill on our journey, the profound wisdom of acceptance. We have learned to anchor ourselves in the present moment, to taste the sweetness of the strawberry, even when surrounded by tigers. This is a profound skill, a gateway to peace. But we must be honest with ourselves. Sometimes, the present moment itself feels like a tiger. Sometimes, the reality of the here and now is not a sweet fruit, but a bitter pill. What happens when the present moment is filled with the chronic ache of an aging joint, the sharp sting of grief, or the cold fear that accompanies a difficult medical diagnosis? Our most basic human instinct in these moments is to resist. We push back against reality with all our might. We declare, silently or aloud, "This should not be happening. This is wrong. I do not want this." This resistance is perfectly understandable. It is a natural impulse to protect ourselves from pain. But the deep wisdom of Zen teaches us that this very resistance, this mental war against what is the primary source of our suffering. The initial pain is the first arrow, shot by life. The suffering we create by resisting the pain, by layering it with stories of fear and injustice, is the second arrow, which we shoot into ourselves. The practice of acceptance is about learning how to avoid firing that second arrow. It is absolutely crucial, from the very beginning, to understand the difference between acceptance and resignation. Our culture often confuses the two, but they are polar opposites. Resignation is a state of passive, joyless defeat. It is heavy and hopeless. It is the voice that says, "There is nothing I can do, so I give up. This is my miserable lot in life, and I am stuck with it." Resignation closes the door on possibility and smothers the spirit. It is a gray, lifeless state of being. Acceptance, on the other hand, is an act of profound courage, clarity, and strength. Acceptance is not about liking a situation. It is not about wanting the pain to continue. It is simply about the willingness to see reality as it is, right now, without the filter of our preferences. It is looking squarely at the truth of the present moment and saying, "Okay, this is what is here right now. This ache is in my knee. This sadness is in my heart. This fear is in my mind. I see it clearly." Acceptance is an act of opening, not closing. It is from this clear-eyed, non-resistant starting point that wise action becomes possible. You can fully accept a diagnosis of diabetes, and from that place of acceptance, you can more effectively learn about the condition, change your diet, and manage your health. You can fully accept that your mobility has changed. And from that place of acceptance, you can explore new hobbies or find new ways to move that bring you joy. Resignation is giving up. Acceptance is the starting point for working intelligently with what is. It is the difference between being a victim of your circumstances and being a student of your reality. The natural world provides us with a perfect teacher in this regard. Imagine a great and powerful storm sweeping through a forest. There are two kinds of trees. First, there is the mighty oak. It is strong, rigid, and proud. It stands as a symbol of unbending strength. When the storm winds blow, the oak resists. It stands its ground, fighting the force of the wind with all its might, and for a time, it may succeed. But if the storm is strong enough, the oak's rigidity becomes its downfall. The force of the wind finds no give, and eventually, with a great crack, a limb breaks, or the entire trunk splits in two. Then there is the willow tree. The willow is not as imposing as the oak. Its strength lies in its flexibility, its surrender. When the storm winds blow, the willow does not fight back. It bends, it yields, it dances with the wind, allowing the force to move through it. Its branches may sweep the ground, it may be bent over completely, but because it does not resist, it does not break. When the storm passes, the willow tree simply, gracefully, returns to its form, perhaps having lost a few leaves, but fundamentally intact and alive. In our lives, especially as we face the inevitable storms of aging and health challenges, we have a choice. We can be the oak tree, rigidly resisting the natural changes in our body and life. We can clench our fists and our jaw, fighting the reality of pain or limitation. And in doing so, we create immense tension, stress, and fragility. We risk breaking. Or we can learn to be the willow tree. We can learn to meet the winds of change with flexibility and grace. This does not mean we are weak. It means we are wise. We understand that our bodies, like all things in nature, are subject to the laws of change. To fight this law is to fight reality itself, a battle we can never win. To accept this law is to find a new kind of strength, the resilient strength of the willow that bends without breaking. This wisdom can be applied directly to the experience of physical pain, which is such a common companion in our later years. The practice is to change our relationship to the pain, moving from identification to observation. When we are in pain, our mind tends to collapse around the sensation, and a single thought dominates. I am in pain. The I and the pain become fused together. We are the pain. This is a state of immense suffering. The practice of mindfulness offers a way to gently pry this fusion apart. You can do this right now. Find a sensation of discomfort in your body, however mild or intense. Instead of turning away from it, turn toward it with the gentle curiosity of a scientist. Let go of the label pain and just investigate the raw, physical sensations. Where, exactly, is it located? If you had to draw a line around it, where would the border be? What is its actual quality? Is it a sharp, stabbing feeling? Is it a dull, heavy ache? Is it a hot, throbbing sensation? Is it a tingling, vibrating energy? Don't use judgmental words, just simple, descriptive ones. Notice if the sensation is constant, or if it changes. Does it intensify and then fade? Does it move? If you look very, very closely, you may discover that what you call pain is not one solid, monstrous thing. It is a constantly shifting, changing flow of sensations. As you engage in this curious, non-judgmental observation, something remarkable happens. A space begins to open up between you, the one who is observing, and the sensation itself. The thought I am in pain can be replaced by a more accurate and liberating thought. I am the awareness that is conscious of a sensation of pain in my knee. You are not the pain. You are the vast, open consciousness that holds the pain. This shift does not magically eliminate the physical sensation, but it can dramatically reduce, and sometimes even eliminate, the suffering about the sensation. You are no longer the oak tree, breaking under the strain. You are the sky, allowing the storm cloud of pain to pass through without destroying you. There is a powerful story from the life of the great Zen master Hakuin that illustrates this profound acceptance. Hakuin was a deeply respected teacher. living a quiet life in his temple. One day, the parents of a local girl stormed into the temple in a rage. Their unmarried daughter was pregnant, and she had named Hakuin as the father. His reputation was instantly destroyed. His followers left him. He was looked upon with scorn and disgust. The parents shouted at him, demanding that he take responsibility. Hakuin listened to their accusations calmly, and when they were finished, his only reply was, "Is that so?" He did not argue. He did not defend himself. He did not resist the reality that was being presented to him. When the child was born, the parents brought the infant and thrust it into his arms. Once again, Hakuin simply said, "Is that so?" and accepted the baby. For over a year, he cared for the child. He, a revered Zen master, went begging from door to door, enduring insults and contempt, to get milk and supplies for the infant. Then, the young mother, overcome with remorse, confessed the truth. The real father was a young man who worked at the fish market. The parents, mortified and deeply ashamed, went back to Hakuin's temple. They bowed low, apologizing profusely, and asked for the child back. Hakuin listened to their confession calmly, and as he handed the healthy, well-cared-for child back to them, his response was exactly the same as it had been before. "Is that so?" Hakuin's inner peace was not dependent on praise or blame, on a good reputation or a bad one. He was a perfect willow tree, bending with the storm of false accusation, and then bending back with the storm of vindication. He did not waste 1 ounce of his life energy fighting what was. He simply accepted the reality of each moment and responded with the compassion and care that was needed. This is the freedom that acceptance offers us. It allows us to stop our exhausting war with reality. It conserves our precious life energy. And with this newfound energy, with this newfound peace, we are now free to take the next step on our journey, to look at what it is within us that causes us to resist in the first place, and to learn the profound and liberating art of letting it go. Having learned to meet the present moment with acceptance, we take a great step toward peace. We cease our exhausting war with reality. The willow tree bends, and so it does not break. This practice of acceptance frees up an enormous amount of life energy that was previously consumed by struggle and resistance. But it also reveals a deeper layer of our inner world. It shines a light on the very reason we resist reality in the first place, our attachments. We resist a difficult diagnosis because we are attached to an image of ourselves as healthy. We resist downsizing our home because we are attached to the memories and the status it represents. We resist a differing opinion because we are attached to the security of being right. Our attachments are the invisible ropes that tie us to suffering. The next great step on the path to inner liberation, then, is to learn the gentle but profound art of letting go. To understand this art, begin with a simple physical experiment. Right now, make a fist with your dominant hand. Clench it tightly. Squeeze it as hard as you can. Pay close attention to the sensation. Feel the tension in your fingers and your knuckles, the strain in your wrist and forearm. Notice the effort, the energy it takes to maintain that clench. It is a state of contraction, of struggle, of holding on. This clenched fist is a perfect metaphor for the mind caught in attachment. Now, very slowly, consciously, begin to open your hand. Feel the muscles release, one by one. Feel the tension dissolving. Spread your fingers wide and feel the air on your palm. Notice the sensation of ease, of release, of openness. This is the feeling of letting go. What is crucial to understand is that the suffering was not in the hand itself, but in the act of clenching. The freedom is not in getting rid of the hand, but in the simple act of opening it. In the same way, our suffering in life comes not from the things, people, or ideas we have, but from the way we mentally clench around them, the way we grasp and cling, terrified of losing them. Letting go is not an act of loss. It is an act of liberation. It is the choice to release the painful tension of clinging and to return to our natural state of ease and openness. So, what are these clenched fists of the mind? It is wise to identify them with gentle, non-judgmental awareness. One of the tightest fists we hold is our attachment to identity and roles. For decades, you may have been a doctor, a teacher, a carpenter, a CEO. You were a mother, a father, the reliable one, the strong one. These roles gave you a sense of purpose and a place in the world. But they are not who you are. They are costumes you have worn. When retirement comes, or when children leave home, these costumes are taken away, and we can feel naked and lost, because we have mistaken the costume for our actual body. The mind clenches around the memory of the role, refusing to let go, creating a deep sense of lack in the present. We also clench around our possessions, the house filled with a lifetime of objects, the car that was once a symbol of success, the clothes that represent a younger version of ourselves. These things themselves are neutral, but our attachment to them, our belief that our happiness and security are embedded within them, makes them a source of anxiety. We worry about them breaking, about them being lost, about having to part with them. Each possession becomes another rope that tethers our peace of mind to something outside of ourselves. Perhaps most subtly, we clench around our opinions. We hold so tightly to our beliefs about politics, about religion, about the way things should be. We identify with our thoughts so strongly that when someone challenges our opinion, we feel as though we ourselves are being attacked. This mental clenching makes us rigid, defensive, and closes our hearts to learning and connection. It traps us in the tiny prison of our own viewpoint. There is a simple and tragic story told about how monkeys are sometimes caught in India. A hunter takes a coconut and hollows it out, cutting a hole just large enough for a monkey's open hand to slide through. The hunter puts a handful of rice or some other sweet treat inside the coconut and chains it to a tree. Sooner or later, a monkey comes along, smells the treat, and slips its slender hand into the coconut. It gleefully grasps the rice, making a fist. But now, the fist is too large to be pulled back out through the hole. The monkey pulls and screeches, frantic and confused. It is trapped. The hunter can simply walk up and capture the terrified animal. The profound and tragic irony is that the monkey is not truly being held by the trap. It is being held by its own desire, by its own attachment. At any moment, all it has to do to be completely free is to open its hand, let go of the rice, and slip its hand out. But its clinging is so powerful, so instinctual, that it cannot bring itself to do so. It chooses the rice over its own freedom. This story invites us to look into our own lives with unflinching honesty. What is the rice that we are clinging to so tightly that it is keeping us trapped in a state of suffering? Is it a past identity? Is it the need to be right? Is it an old resentment? Is it the fear of change? The prison is of our own making, and the key, the freedom, is always in our own hand. It is the simple, courageous willingness to unclench. Like any art, letting go is a skill that can be practiced. It is best to start small, to build the muscle with things that are less charged. You can begin with the physical. Choose one drawer, one closet, one corner of your home that is filled with clutter. Go through the items one by one. Pick up an object you haven't used in 5 years. Notice the immediate story the mind tells. But this was a gift from my sister, or I might need this someday. Acknowledge the story, and then ask, is holding on to this object bringing me more peace or more clutter? If you decide to let it go, do so consciously. You might even thank the object for its service. As you donate it or discard it, feel the physical space you are creating. This physical practice of decluttering is a powerful training ground for the mind. You are teaching yourself, in a tangible way, that letting go leads not to lack, but to lightness and space. Then, you can apply this to the mental realm. Throughout your day, notice when your mind clenches. Perhaps you read something in the news, and you feel your mind tighten with anger and a rigid opinion. In that moment, just notice the sensation of clenching. You don't have to change the opinion. Just see if you can breathe into the tension. Can you soften around the edges of your certainty? Can you allow for the possibility that the world is more complex than your opinion? This is not about being passive. It is about choosing mental flexibility over mental rigidity. You are unclenching the fist of the mind. The greatest fear that prevents us from letting go is the fear of emptiness. We think that if we let go of our roles, our possessions, our beliefs, and our stories, we will be left with nothing. We will be a vacuum, a void, a state of meaninglessness. This is a fundamental misunderstanding of the emptiness that Buddhist wisdom speaks of. This emptiness, or shunyata, is not a negative void. It is a vibrant, limitless potentiality. Imagine a room that is so crammed with old, broken furniture that you can barely move. The room is full, but it is useless. Letting go is the process of clearing out that furniture. The result is an empty room. This emptiness is not a sad nothingness. It is glorious. It is space. It is light. It is potential. Now you can dance in the room. You can fill it with new, beautiful things if you choose. Or you can simply enjoy the profound peace of the open space itself. When you let go of the rigid identity of "I am a retired executive," you don't become nothing. You create the open space to discover the part of you that loves to paint, the part that is a patient listener, the part that finds joy in nature. You allow the authentic self, which was buried under the clutter of your roles, to finally breathe and emerge. Letting go is not the path to meaninglessness. It is the path that clears the way for a deeper, more true, and more resilient meaning to be discovered. And this raises the most profound question of all. If I let go of all the things I thought I was, who am I, really? This question is the doorway to the next stage of our journey, the search for the true nature of the self. Having learned to let go of our attachments, to gently unclench the fists of the mind, we arrive at a question of profound depth and simplicity. If I am not my job, not my possessions, not my memories, not even my cherished opinions, then who or what am I? This is perhaps the oldest and most essential question of the human experience. From our earliest moments, we begin to construct an answer. We are given a name. We learn to identify with the reflection in the mirror. We build a story, a narrative of our life, composed of our triumphs and our traumas, our talents and our shortcomings. This constructed identity, this story of me, is what we call the ego or the self. It feels utterly solid and real. It feels like the center of the universe, the protagonist in our own personal drama. And we spend the vast majority of our lives polishing, promoting, and defending this self. We feel pride when it is praised and feel wounded when it is criticized. We accumulate things to enhance it and craft experiences to validate it. The Zen path does not offer a new, better story to believe in. It does not hand you a different answer to the question of who am I? Instead, it hands you a lantern and invites you to go on a search for this self, to conduct your own deep and honest investigation. This investigation begins by taking a closer look at the usual candidates for this so-called self. Let us start with the most obvious one, the body. Is this body, this collection of flesh, blood, and bone, the real me? At first, the answer seems to be an obvious yes. But let's look closer. This body is in a constant state of flux. The cells that compose it are continuously dying and being replaced. The body you inhabit today is not the same physical entity it was a decade ago, or even a year ago. It is more like a river than a statue, a process rather than a thing. It gets sick, it ages, it changes its shape and its abilities. It is entirely dependent on air, water, and food from the outside world to continue its existence. And one day, as we all know, this process will cease, the body will fail. If this me is something that is constantly changing, entirely dependent, and ultimately mortal, can it truly be the permanent, independent self we feel ourselves to be? The investigation suggests no. The body is something we have, something we experience, but it is not what we are. So, if not the body, then perhaps the self resides in the mind? Let's look at our feelings. Am I my happiness? Am I my sadness? Am I my anger? This seems unlikely, for feelings are even more fleeting than the body. Joy arises, perhaps from a beautiful sunset, and for a few moments it fills our awareness. But it does not last. It gives way to contentment, or boredom, or perhaps a pang of sadness. Grief can feel all-consuming, as if it has become our very identity. But even the deepest grief ebbs and flows. It changes its texture over time. Feelings are like the weather passing through the sky of our awareness. They are temporary events. They cannot be the constant, abiding self we are searching for. What about our thoughts? Surely, the thinker is the self. But here too, if we look closely, the proposition falls apart. Sit quietly for just 1 minute and try to watch your thoughts. You will find an endless stream of them, appearing from nowhere, lingering for a moment, and then vanishing, only to be replaced by the next. Random memories, snippets of songs, worries, plans, judgments. Who is creating this endless chatter? Are you consciously authoring every single thought, or do they simply arise? The more you watch, the more it seems that thinking is just another process that happens within us, like breathing or digestion. Thoughts happen, but the permanent, singular thinker behind them is nowhere to be found. We are like someone peeling an onion, searching for the core. The outer, papery skin is our public persona, the face we show the world. We peel it back and find the layer of our professional identity. We peel that away and find our role within the family. We keep peeling, moving through our hopes, our fears, our accomplishments, our regrets. Each layer is real, each layer is part of the story. But we are convinced that somewhere, deep inside, there must be a central core, a final essence, the fundamental onionness that all the layers surround. We peel away the last, translucent layer, and we are left with nothing. There is no core. And in that moment of finding nothing, we have a startling realization. The onion was never anything other than the sum of its layers. There is no onion separate from the layers. The onion is the process of the layers, existing together. In the same way, the Zen investigation reveals that the self we have been searching for is not a noun, but a verb. There is no static, independent me at the center of our experience. There is only a dynamic, ever-changing process of bodying, feeling, thinking, and perceiving. The self is a story we have been telling ourselves, a useful convention for navigating the world, but not an ultimate reality. This can be a difficult, even frightening, idea to grasp. It can feel like the ground is crumbling beneath our feet, and so we need more than just intellectual understanding. We need a way to experience this truth directly. The tool for this direct seeing is called vipassana, or insight meditation. Unlike meditations designed purely for relaxation, insight meditation is a practice of radical clarity. We begin, as always, with the breath, but then we slowly widen the field of our awareness to include everything that enters our experience. A sound arises. Instead of identifying it and getting lost in a story about it, we simply note it in our mind. Hearing. We feel its vibration, and we notice its passing. A thought of the future appears. We note it. Planning. We see it as a mental event, and we watch it dissolve. A feeling of impatience arises in the body. We note it. Sensation. We investigate its physical quality without judgment, and we watch it transform. By patiently and persistently observing our experience in this way, moment by moment, we begin to see for ourselves, with unshakable certainty, the three fundamental characteristics of existence. We see that all things are impermanent, they arise and they pass away. We see that clinging to these impermanent things leads to suffering. And we see, most profoundly, that there is no fixed, solid, independent self to be found anywhere. There is just this flow, this dance of phenomena, arising and ceasing, moment after moment. The initial fear that this discovery of no self, or anatta, provokes is entirely natural. If I am not a self, am I just nothing? Is my life meaningless? But the great liberation of this path is the realization that the opposite is true. The ego, this constructed self, this identity we have worked so hard to protect, is not a king to be served, but a prison guard to befriend. It is the very source of our deepest fears. It is the me that feels insecure. It is the me that needs to be right. It is the me that is terrified of being insulted, of growing old, of failing, of dying. When you see, in the core of your being, that this separate self is a fiction, the walls of the prison dissolve. If there is no solid self to insult, the words of others become just sounds, losing their power to wound. If there is no solid self to fail, you are free to act with greater creativity and courage, no longer paralyzed by the fear of judgment. If there is no isolated, separate self to die, the fear of annihilation transforms into a deep understanding that you are not a lonely wave in the ocean, but a manifestation of the entire ocean itself. You do not cease to exist. You simply merge back into the whole from which you were never truly separate. The discovery of no self is not your annihilation. It is the annihilation of your anxiety. It is not the end of your life. It is the end of your fear. You stop identifying with the small, fragile, and temporary wave, and you begin to realize that your true nature is the vast, timeless, and indestructible ocean. The collapse of the walls of the separate self does not leave behind a meaningless void. It reveals an open, boundless field of awareness. And in this open field, a new quality, a new way of being, can finally blossom, effortlessly and naturally, a deep, unconditional compassion for all beings. When the relentless, lifelong search for a solid, separate self comes to a quiet end, we are not left in a cold, empty void. The discovery that there is no fixed me to defend, no fragile ego to constantly guard, does not lead to meaninglessness. On the contrary, when the walls of that small, imaginary prison crumble, we find ourselves standing in an open, boundless field of awareness. For the first time, we can see clearly. And what we see is that our own deepest desire to be happy and free from suffering is the exact same desire that animates every other living being. The stranger on the street, the bird in the tree, even the person who has caused us pain, is driven by this same fundamental impulse. The feeling of separation dissolves, replaced by a profound sense of kinship, of shared existence. The heart's natural, unforced response to this recognition is compassion. Compassion is not a moral duty to be shouldered, or a virtuous ideal to strive for. It is the logical and emotional consequence of seeing reality clearly. It is the warmth that naturally floods the space created by the dissolution of the self. The journey into this boundless heart must always begin in one place, at home, with ourselves. For many of us, this is the most difficult step. We live with a relentless inner critic, a voice in our head that has been cataloging our failures and shortcomings for decades. It is the voice that says, "You are not good enough. You should have done better. You are too old, too weak, too late." We would never dream of speaking to a friend, or even a stranger, with such harshness. Yet we subject ourselves to this internal barrage day after day. To then try and offer compassion to others while treating ourselves with such cruelty is like trying to pour water from a cup that is already empty. It is inauthentic and unsustainable. Therefore, the very foundation of true compassion for others is the practice of self-compassion. It is the courageous act of turning toward our own suffering with the same kindness and care we would offer to a beloved friend. A simple yet powerful practice for this is called metta, or loving kindness meditation. You can begin by finding a quiet moment, perhaps placing a hand gently over your heart to create a sense of warmth and connection. Closing your eyes, you can silently offer yourself a few simple, heartfelt wishes. The traditional phrases are, "May I be safe, may I be healthy, may I be peaceful, may I live with ease." As you repeat these phrases, you may notice resistance. The inner critic may scoff and say you don't deserve it. The practice is not to fight this voice, but to simply let it be, and to continue offering the kind wishes anyway. You are not trying to force a feeling. You are planting the seeds of kindness in the soil of your own heart. By tending to your own well-being first, you fill your cup so that your compassion for others can overflow naturally, rather than being a stressful obligation. Once you have established a baseline of kindness for yourself, you can begin to radiate that compassion outward in expanding circles. After offering loving kindness to yourself, you bring to mind a benefactor or a dear friend, someone for whom you feel easy, uncomplicated love and gratitude. You hold their image in your mind's eye, and you offer them the very same wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth that arises in your heart as you do this. This primes the pump, allowing the flow of goodwill to move more freely. The next circle is to bring to mind a neutral person. This might be the person who delivers your mail, a cashier at the grocery store, or a neighbor you see but don't really know. You know nothing of their struggles or their joys, but you can know with certainty that just like you, they wish to be happy. So you hold them in your awareness and you extend the same wishes. May you be safe. May you be healthy. May you be peaceful. In this act, you are stretching the muscle of your heart, learning to care beyond your immediate tribe. The final and most transformative circle is to bring to mind a difficult person. This is someone with whom you have conflict, someone who has hurt you, or someone you simply dislike. The practice here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself to like them. It is an act of profound wisdom. It is the recognition that this person's harmful actions almost certainly spring from their own deep suffering, their own ignorance, anger, or fear. You see that their inner world is a painful place to be. And from this place of understanding, you can, perhaps tentatively at first, offer them the wish. May you be free from the suffering that causes you to act this way. May you too find peace. This is not for their benefit, it is for yours. It is the act that dissolves the poison of resentment in your own heart and sets you free. It is vital to understand that this deep compassion, known as karuna in Buddhist thought, is not the same as pity. Pity comes from a sense of separation and superiority. When we pity someone, we look down from our own perceived higher ground and say, "Oh, that poor person. I am so glad I am not them." Pity creates distance. It reinforces the ego. Compassion, on the other hand, is born from a sense of unity and shared humanity. It arises from the wisdom of no self. It looks at another being suffering and says, "I recognize that. That suffering is not foreign to me. Your desire for peace is my desire for peace. We are in this together." Compassion breaks down the walls between self and other. It is the felt experience of our interconnectedness. It is the heart's response to the truth that your suffering diminishes me and your happiness enriches me. There is a moving story that illustrates this quality of embodied, active compassion. One day, the Buddha was walking through the monastery when he came upon a monk who was gravely ill with dysentery. He was so sick and weak that he had fallen and was lying in his own filth. The other monks, out of fear of contagion or simple aversion, had abandoned him. He was alone and in misery. The Buddha, the Enlightened One, saw the situation, and without a moment of hesitation, he went to the sick monk. He gently and lovingly began to wash the monk's body with warm water, cleaning his soiled robes and making him comfortable. His chief disciple, Ananda, helped him. When the monk was clean and resting, the Buddha gathered the other monks together. He asked them, "Why did you abandon this brother?" When they remained silent, he spoke these powerful words, "Monks, you have no mother or father here to care for you. If you do not care for one another, who then will care for you? Know this, whoever compassionately cares for the sick and the suffering is, in that very act, caring for me. And whoever wishes to serve me should serve the sick." Compassion is not a lofty, abstract idea. It is the practical, hands-on, courageous willingness to move towards suffering in ourselves and in others in order to alleviate it. For most of us, opportunities to wash a sick monk may be rare, but we have endless opportunities to practice compassion in one of its most powerful and healing forms, deep listening. In our fast-paced world, to be truly heard is one of the rarest gifts. We are so often engaged in what is called listening to reply. While the other person is talking, we are not truly with them. We are busy formulating our counter-argument, preparing our brilliant advice, or waiting for a gap so we can share our own, more interesting story. Deep listening is the opposite. It is the compassionate offering of your full, undivided, non-judgmental presence. It is setting aside your own agenda and creating a safe, open space for another person to express themselves. You listen not just to the words being said, but to the feelings underneath them. You listen with your heart. The goal is not to fix, to advise, or to solve. It is simply to understand. It is to communicate through your silent, focused attention. I am here with you. I see you. I hear you. You matter. This kind of listening can be more healing than any advice. It is a pure act of love. It dissolves the other person's feeling of isolation and validates their existence. It is the boundless heart in action. As we cultivate this heart, our sense of connection to all of life deepens. But what happens when, despite this inner connection, our outer circumstances leave us feeling profoundly alone? This brings us to a crucial exploration for anyone in their later years. The difference between painful loneliness and profound solitude. With a heart that is open and compassionate, we learn to connect more deeply with the world and with others. We see ourselves in their struggles and joys. Yet, there is a paradox that often arises in the later chapters of life. Even as our capacity for inner connection grows, our external circumstances may lead us to spend more time alone. A spouse may have passed on, children may live far away, friends may be less mobile, and our own energy may limit our social life. This increase in time spent alone can bring with it a deep and painful ache, a feeling we call loneliness. It is a sense of being left out, of being forgotten, a feeling of lack and incompleteness. It is one of the most common and difficult forms of suffering in our modern world. But the wisdom of Zen offers a revolutionary perspective. It suggests that the external state of being by yourself is neutral. It is a blank canvas. It is our internal relationship to that state that paints it with either the bleak, gray colors of loneliness or the rich, vibrant hues of solitude. The journey is not about desperately trying to fill our lives with more people to avoid being alone. It is about transforming our experience of being alone from one of pain into one of profound peace and fullness. To begin this transformation, we must first understand the nature of loneliness. Loneliness is not simply the absence of other people. We can feel excruciatingly lonely in the middle of a bustling party, or even within a long-term marriage. Loneliness is the painful feeling of disconnection. It is a hunger for connection that feels unmet. And while it feels like a hunger for connection with others, its true root is often a lack of connection with ourselves. We live in a culture of noise and distraction. From the moment we wake to the moment we sleep, we are encouraged to fill every empty space with something from the outside. The television, the radio, the internet, the endless stream of news and opinions. We have become so accustomed to this constant external input that we are terrified of silence. We are afraid of what we will find when the noise stops. Because when the distractions cease, we are left alone with ourselves, with our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own memories. And if we have never learned how to be a kind and gentle companion to ourselves, this encounter can feel frightening, boring, or overwhelming. Loneliness, at its core, is the anxiety of being with a stranger you do not know or do not like. And that stranger is yourself. We seek the company of others not for the joy of connection, but to escape from our own inner turmoil. The antidote to loneliness is not more company, but the cultivation of solitude. Solitude is a word that has been misunderstood. It is not a punishment or a deprivation. Solitude is the art of being joyfully and peacefully with yourself. It is a conscious and positive choice to turn inward and find contentment there. Loneliness is a state of lack. Solitude is a state of fullness. To cultivate this, we can start by creating a sacred space and time for it. This doesn't need to be elaborate. It could be a particular armchair by a window, a cushion on the floor, or a bench in the garden. It is your designated space for intentional solitude. You can then set aside a small, manageable amount of time each day, perhaps just 15 minutes to start, where you consciously choose to be alone without distraction. No phone, no television, no book, no tasks. You simply give yourself permission to be. In this time, instead of seeing it as doing nothing, you can see it as a rich exploration. You can practice being fully present with your senses. You might put on a piece of instrumental music and listen to it with your entire being, following each note as it rises and falls. You might sip a cup of tea, engaging with its warmth, its aroma, its taste, as the sole focus of your world. You might engage in a quiet, creative activity like painting, knitting, or tending to a plant, focusing on the simple, rhythmic joy of the process itself, without any concern for the outcome. The key is to shift from seeking fulfillment from the outside to discovering the richness that is already present within your own experience. The great sages and mystics throughout history understood this power. Think of the stories of Zen masters, yogis, and hermits who would retreat to remote mountains or secluded caves for long periods. They were not antisocial recluses who hated humanity. They were not running away from life. They were the most courageous explorers, running toward the very heart of life. They understood that the constant demands, conversations, and dramas of social life, while valuable, also create a kind of surface static that obscures the deeper signals of reality. They knew that in order to hear the subtle, quiet voice of truth, they first had to quiet the loud, incessant voice of the world. Their solitude was not an escape. It was a laboratory. It was the pristine environment in which they could conduct the most important experiment of all, the deep investigation of the nature of mind and existence. And what these explorers discovered, universally, was that in the depths of their solitude, they were not lonely. In fact, they felt more profoundly connected to the essence of all things than ever before. They found a peace that did not depend on external conditions and a joy that arose from within. What is it that they found in the silence? They discovered that our minds produce two very different kinds of voices. The first is the loud, surface-level chatter of the ego. This is the voice we are most familiar with. It is the voice of our conditioning, the one that is constantly worrying, planning, judging, regretting, and desiring. It is the narrator of our personal drama, and it is almost always anxious. But beneath this noisy surface, there is another voice, or rather, a different kind of knowing. It is not so much a voice as it is a deep, quiet intuition. It is a sense of clarity, of peace, a wisdom that does not come from frantic logical thought. It is the voice of our true nature. This deep wisdom cannot be heard when our minds are filled with the clamor of everyday concerns and distractions. It is like trying to see the bottom of a lake while the surface is being churned by a storm. The practice of solitude is the act of allowing the storm to pass. It is letting the muddy waters of the mind settle so that clarity can emerge naturally. It is in this settled stillness that we find what we were truly looking for all along. The answers to our deepest questions are not out there in the world. They are waiting for us in the quiet of our own heart. The contentment we sought from others is discovered to be our own inherent nature. As we become more comfortable being with ourselves, a beautiful alchemy occurs. We stop needing others to save us from our own company. This, paradoxically, makes our relationships with others much richer. We can engage with people not from a place of desperate need or hunger, but from a place of fullness and generosity. We can offer them the gift of our presence without demanding anything in return. We discover that solitude and connection are not opposites. True solitude is the bedrock upon which authentic connection can be built. And something else remarkable happens in this quiet space. As the clamor of the ego and the feeling of being a small, isolated, lonely self begins to fade, our perception of the world starts to shift. We begin to notice the subtle, intricate web of relationships that surrounds us. We see how the sun, the clouds, and the earth are all present in the tea we are drinking. We feel how the air we breathe connects our inner world with the world outside. We start to lose the sense of a hard boundary between me and not me. In the depths of our solitude, we discover the profound truth of our unity. This direct seeing of our fundamental oneness with all of life is the next great vista on our journey. As we learn to rest comfortably in our own company, transforming loneliness into a rich and peaceful solitude, a remarkable shift in perception begins to occur. The feeling of being a small, isolated self, separate from the world around us, starts to dissolve. In the quiet of our own heart, we begin to sense a hidden truth, a deep and mysterious connection to everything that exists. This is not just a poetic feeling, it is a profound insight into the very nature of reality, an understanding that Zen wisdom calls interconnectedness or interbeing. This principle is simple in its statement, yet its implications are vast and life-altering. It states that nothing, absolutely nothing in the entire cosmos exists by itself. Everything in existence is intimately connected to and dependent on everything else. The world is not a collection of separate objects, like marbles in a jar. It is a single, seamless, interwoven tapestry, a vast net where every jewel reflects every other jewel. To grasp this idea, let us not think in abstract terms. Let us look at something simple and ordinary. Let us look at this very moment and the words you are hearing. These words are carried on sound waves through the air, but they are also carried on the electricity powering your device. That electricity may come from the sun, or wind, or burning fossil fuels from ancient forests. The device itself was assembled in a factory by people you will never meet, using minerals mined from the earth on different continents. The language being used, English, is a living river of history, shaped by countless cultures and generations. For you to be here, listening to these words, your entire life history had to unfold exactly as it did. The lives of your parents and their parents and all your ancestors had to happen. The entire history of the universe, from the first flaring forth of stars to this very breath you are taking now, has conspired to create this one simple moment. This is interbeing. It is the understanding that the universe is not something out there. You are not just in the universe is in you. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offered a beautiful contemplation to illuminate this truth. He would hold up a simple sheet of blank paper and ask his students to look deeply into it. On the surface, it is just a piece of paper. But if we look with the eyes of interbeing, we see much more. We see that there is a cloud floating in this sheet of paper. Why? Because without a cloud, there can be no rain. Without rain, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, we cannot make paper. So the cloud is an essential part of the paper. If the cloud is not there, the paper cannot be there. We also see the sunshine. The sun is crucial for the tree's photosynthesis, the process that gives it life and allows it to grow. So the sun is also in the sheet of paper. And if we look deeper, we see the logger who cut the tree. We see his axe. And we see his parents who gave him life. We see the wheat in the bread he ate for breakfast. And we see the farmer who grew the wheat and the soil that nourished it. We see the person who packed the paper, the person who drove the truck to deliver it. The mind of the person who invented the process of paper making is there. The entire economy, the entire ecosystem is present in this humble sheet of paper. If we were to return any one of these elements to its source, if we were to give the sunshine back to the sun, the water back to the cloud, the logger back to his parents, the sheet of paper would cease to exist. It cannot be by itself alone. It can only interbe with everything else. Let us bring this investigation even closer to home, to an experience as common and comforting as a warm cup of tea. As you hold the cup, look into it. You see the clear, amber liquid, but what you are really seeing is the universe. In this tea, there is the rain that fell on the tea plantation. There is the rich soil that nourished the roots of the tea bush. There is the sun that coaxed the leaves to grow. There is the care of the farmer who tended the plants and harvested the leaves. The tea contains the journey from the mountain to your kitchen, the work of countless people. Now look at the water. It was once a cloud. It was once part of a river. It was once in the vast ocean. It has been circulating on this planet for eons. And the cup itself, it is made of clay, which is the earth itself, shaped by the hands and the intention of a potter, transformed by the fire of a kiln. All these elements, earth, wind, fire, water, and human consciousness, are sitting here, in your hands, in this simple cup of tea. To be truly present with a cup of tea is to be in intimate communion with the entire cosmos. The intellectual understanding of this is interesting, but the true power of this teaching lies in its ability to heal the deepest wound of the human heart, the feeling of being separate, alone, and isolated. This feeling is a painful illusion. The teaching of interbeing is the medicine that dissolves this illusion. We think of my body, but this body is a temporary gathering of non-body elements. It is the food we've eaten, the water we've drunk, the air we've breathed, the sunlight we've absorbed. We are a walking, talking continuation of our ancestors, our parents, and our planet. We think of my thoughts and my feelings, but they are profoundly shaped by the language we speak, the culture we were raised in, and the ideas we have inherited. We are not a lonely island. We are a single wave on the surface of a single, unified ocean of being. The wave has its own temporary shape and form, but its essential nature is water, the same as every other wave, the same as the entire ocean. Realizing this does not diminish us. It expands us beyond our wildest imagination. We cease to identify with the small, fragile, and temporary wave, and we begin to sense our true nature as the vast, eternal, and interconnected ocean. The terror of being a fragile, isolated self, facing the world alone, simply melts away in the warmth of this understanding. This profound insight has a direct and practical impact on how we live our lives. If it is true that everything is connected, then it follows that every action we take, every word we speak, every thought we think, has ripples that extend out into the entire web of life. Nothing we do is insignificant. A kind word spoken to a family member does not stop there. It changes their emotional state, which in turn affects how they interact with the next person they meet, and so on, in ever-widening circles. A simple consumer choice we make has consequences for people and ecosystems on the other side of the world. This is not meant to be a heavy burden of guilt. It is an invitation to a life of profound meaning and purpose. It means that even when we feel we are no longer playing a major role on the world stage, even in the quiet of retirement, our lives have immense significance. By cultivating peace in our own hearts, we are contributing to the peace of the world. By tending to our garden, by smiling at a stranger, by listening deeply to a friend, we are actively weaving a more beautiful pattern into the great tapestry of existence. This understanding gives us a quiet, unshakable sense of responsibility and dignity. Our lives matter, right up to our very last breath. And when we truly understand that the entire universe is present in a single blade of grass or a simple cup of tea, we no longer need to search for happiness in grand achievements or spectacular experiences. We discover that a deep and abiding joy can be found in the most simple and ordinary moments of our lives. The realization that all of existence is a single, interconnected web brings with it a profound sense of wonder. We begin to see the universe reflected in a simple cup of tea, and the entire history of the cosmos leading to this very breath. This new way of seeing naturally guides us toward a new way of living, one that is rooted in the joy of simplicity. Our modern culture operates on a powerful and pervasive promise that happiness is something that can be acquired. It is a product to be purchased, an experience to be booked, a status to be achieved. The message is relentless. A new car will make you happy. A bigger house will bring you contentment. A luxury vacation will deliver fulfillment. And so we enter the race. We work hard. We accumulate. We consume, chasing after that next thing that we believe will finally provide lasting satisfaction. Yet, if we are honest with ourselves, we know the truth of this chase. The pleasure that comes from a new possession is fleeting. The thrill of the new car fades. The novelty of the bigger house wears off. The vacation ends, and we are left with our same mind, our same baseline of happiness, now already looking for the next thing to acquire. This is the great deception of consumerism, often called the hedonic treadmill. We keep running faster and faster, but we remain in the same place. We have been taught to look for happiness outside of ourselves, and so we are forever looking, forever seeking, and never truly finding. The wisdom of Zen offers a radical alternative. It invites us to distinguish between two different kinds of happiness. The first is pleasure, or what the ancient Greeks called hedonia. This is the happiness that depends on external stimuli. It is the enjoyment of a delicious meal, the excitement of a new purchase, the pleasure of praise and recognition. There is nothing inherently wrong with these things, but they are, by their very nature, temporary and unreliable. Because they depend on conditions outside of our control, our peace of mind becomes fragile, constantly at the mercy of life's ups and downs. The second kind of happiness is what we can call true happiness or deep well-being, a concept similar to the Buddhist term sukha. This is not a fleeting high. It is a stable and abiding sense of peace, contentment, and fulfillment that arises from within. It is not something we acquire. It is something we cultivate. It is the natural state of a mind that is balanced, a heart that is compassionate, and an awareness that sees reality clearly. This is a happiness that does not depend on whether life is giving us what we want. It is a deep inner resilience, a peace that can remain unshaken even amidst difficulty. The path of simplicity is a conscious choice to shift our primary focus from chasing the first kind of happiness to cultivating the second. It is the decision to stop trying to decorate the prison cell of the ego, and instead, to discover the key that unlocks the door. This cultivation begins by retraining our attention. Our minds have been conditioned to overlook the ordinary, to constantly scan the horizon for something bigger, better, or more exciting. The practice of simplicity is the practice of bringing our attention back home, of learning to savor the small, unadorned gifts that are present in every moment of our lives. You can begin this practice right now. For instance, you can cultivate the joy of mindful eating. Choose just one meal a day, or even just the first 3 bites of each meal, to eat in complete silence with your full attention. Before you eat, take a moment to look at your food. Notice the colors, the shapes, the textures. Take a moment to smell the aromas. When you take a bite, chew slowly. Try to identify the different flavors. Notice the sensation of the food in your mouth. Remember, as we have discussed, All the elements of the universe, the sun, the earth, the rain, the work of many people that have come together to create this nourishing bite. You can also practice with sound. Find a comfortable place to sit, close your eyes, and simply listen. Do not judge or label sounds. Let go of the categories of pleasant like birdsong and unpleasant like the sound of traffic. Instead, receive all sounds as part of the unique symphony of this present moment. A symphony that will never be repeated in exactly the same way again. At the end of each day, you might take 2 minutes to do a gratitude inventory. Lying in bed, mentally list 3 simple things from your day for which you are grateful. It could be the warmth of your blanket, a friendly conversation, the beauty of a cloud, the comfort of a chair. This simple practice actively rewires the brain to notice the good that is already here, shifting the balance from a mindset of lack to one of quiet abundance. There is a beloved Zen master from long ago named Ryokan, who was a living embodiment of this joy and simplicity. He was a great poet and calligrapher, but he chose to live a life of voluntary poverty in a simple hut at the foot of a mountain. He owned almost nothing: a single robe, a wooden bowl, a few books. One evening, a thief broke into his hut, hoping to find something valuable to steal. He rummaged around, but, of course, found nothing. Just then, Ryokan returned from his walk. He saw the thief and, instead of feeling anger or fear, his heart was filled with compassion. He said to the startled man, "You must have come a very long way to visit me. It would be a shame for you to leave empty-handed. Please, take my robe as a gift." He helped the bewildered thief take off his only robe. The thief, completely baffled, took the robe and scurried away into the night. Ryokan then sat down, naked, by the open window. He gazed out at the brilliant full moon casting its silver light over the valley. He sighed and thought to himself, "Poor man, I wish I could have given him this beautiful moon." This story beautifully illustrates the heart of simplicity. Ryokan's wealth was not in his meager possessions. He could give them away without a second thought. His true, inalienable wealth was his ability to perceive and appreciate the simple, profound beauty of the present moment, a beauty that cannot be owned or stolen. The thief, whose mind was consumed with acquiring material things, was the one who was truly impoverished, for he was blind to the magnificent treasure of the moon that was freely available to all. When we begin to intentionally simplify our lives, a beautiful paradox unfolds. As our outer world becomes less cluttered, our inner world becomes infinitely richer. A life filled with too many possessions is also a life filled with worry. We must clean them, maintain them, insure them, protect them, and organize them. Each object we own exerts a small gravitational pull on our attention and our energy. Simplifying our material world by consciously decluttering our homes and being more mindful about what we acquire is not an act of deprivation. It is an act of liberation. It frees up vast amounts of mental and emotional space. This newfound inner space allows for other things to blossom. Creativity has room to breathe. Contemplation has a quiet space to unfold. Our relationships with people can deepen because our attention is no longer being consumed by our relationship with things. We begin to realize, on a deep, experiential level, that the best things in life are not things at all. The warmth of true friendship, the unconditional love of a family member or a pet, the deep peace of a quiet mind, the breathtaking beauty of nature, these are the true sources of a rich and meaningful life. We trade the exhausting stress of accumulation for the profound peace of sufficiency. We learn that we do not need more to be happy. We need less distraction from the happiness that is already and always available. This joy and simplicity provides a deep wellspring of contentment and resilience. It is a foundation of peace that we build within ourselves. And this foundation is essential because, as we all know, life is not always simple or joyful. It will inevitably present us with challenges, with pain, and with loss. Equipped with this inner resource of contentment, we are now better prepared to turn our loving attention to one of life's most fundamental truths, the reality of suffering and the sacred alchemy by which it can be transformed. Having discovered the quiet joy that arises from a simple and uncluttered life, we find ourselves standing on a foundation of deeper contentment. This inner resilience is not a luxury, it is a necessity. For as we journey through life, It is inevitable that we will encounter periods that are not simple, not joyful, not easy. Life will present us with challenges, with loss, with physical pain and emotional heartbreak. Our modern culture often treats these experiences as failures, as signs that something has gone wrong. We are encouraged to suppress our sadness, to numb our pain, to present a brave face to the world at all times. But the path of Zen wisdom takes a radically different and far more compassionate approach. It begins not by denying suffering, but by courageously and clearly acknowledging its presence. The first teaching the Buddha offered after his enlightenment was not a comforting platitude, but a straightforward diagnosis of the human condition. He said, "There is suffering." In the ancient Pali language, this is the truth of dukkha. This is not a pessimistic declaration that life is miserable. It is the compassionate and realistic assessment of a wise physician who, before offering a cure, must first clearly identify the illness. To deny the existence of suffering is to live in a fantasy, unable to ever truly heal. To acknowledge it, to look it squarely in the eye, is the first, essential step toward transforming it. This dukkha, this suffering or unsatisfactoriness, manifests in our lives in several ways. There is, of course, the obvious and undeniable suffering of physical pain, sickness, old age, and eventually, death. There is the emotional pain of grief when we lose someone we love, the sting of disappointment when our hopes are dashed, the anxiety of facing an uncertain future. This is the raw, acute pain of life that no one can escape. But there is also a more subtle kind of suffering, the suffering that comes from change. Even our most joyful moments are tinged with this subtle dissatisfaction, because we know they will not last. The beautiful vacation must end. The delightful visit from grandchildren concludes, and the house becomes quiet again. The pleasure of a healthy body is shadowed by the knowledge that it is temporary. We cling to happy moments, trying to freeze them in time, and this very clinging creates a tension and anxiety, because deep down we know that all things are in flow. Finally, there is a deep, underlying existential unsatisfactoriness. It is a background hum of unease that comes from being a temporary, conditioned being in a vast and ever-changing world. It is the feeling that something is missing, the vague sense that no matter what we achieve or acquire, it is never quite enough. Acknowledging all these levels of dukkha is not meant to be depressing. It is meant to be liberating. It validates our experience. It tells us that our feelings of pain and unease are not a personal failure. They are a shared, universal part of the human journey. The most powerful metaphor for this transformation is that of the lotus flower. The lotus is a symbol of purity, beauty, and spiritual awakening that is revered across the Eastern world. It is a flower of exquisite perfection, its petals opening, pristine and radiant to the sun. But the most important thing to know about the lotus is where it grows. The lotus does not grow in a manicured garden or on a clean marble pedestal. The lotus flower takes root and draws its nourishment from the thick, dark, smelly mud at the bottom of a pond. Without the mud, there can be no lotus. The mud is not an unfortunate obstacle to the flower's beauty. It is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite for its existence. So it is with our own lives. Our suffering, our grief, our failures, our fears, our physical and emotional pain. This is the mud of our existence. We spend so much of our energy trying to avoid the mud, trying to deny it, clean it up, or pretend it isn't there. But the spiritual path teaches a different wisdom. It teaches that our greatest strengths, our deepest wisdom, our most profound compassion or lotus flower grows directly out of the very mud we have been trying to escape. Our hearts are tenderized by loss. Our compassion is deepened by our own pain. Our wisdom is forged in the fires of our failures. To run from suffering is to run from the very source of our potential for growth. The sacred alchemy of the spiritual life is the art of learning how to use the mud of our lives to nourish the lotus of our heart. The ancient story of a woman named Kisa Gotami illustrates this transformation with heartbreaking beauty. Kisa Gotami was a young mother in the time of the Buddha, and her first and only child, a baby boy, had died. She was driven mad by grief. Refusing to accept his death, she clasped the small, lifeless body to her chest and wandered from house to house, desperately begging for a medicine that could bring him back. Most people mocked her or ignored her, thinking she had lost her mind. But one wise person saw her immense suffering, and with great kindness directed her to the Buddha, saying, "He is the great physician. Perhaps he has a cure for you." Kisa Gotami ran to the Buddha and pleaded with him to save her son. The Buddha looked at her with boundless compassion and did not dismiss her plea. He said to her, "There is only one thing that can help. You must go into the village and bring me a single mustard seed, but it must be taken from a house where no Wanano child, no husband or wife, no parent or servanthas ever died." Filled with a frantic hope, Kisa Gotami rushed to the village. She went to the first house, and they readily offered her a mustard seed. But when she asked if anyone in the house had ever died, they looked at her with sadness. "Oh, yes," they said. "We lost our father last year." She went to the next house, and the next, and the next. The story was always the same. Everyone was willing to give her a mustard seed, but every single family had been touched by death. They would tell her, "The living are few, but the dead are many." As she continued her search, something inside her began to shift. Her sharp, personal, isolating grief started to soften and expand. She realized that her pain was not unique to her. Loss was not a punishment inflicted upon her alone. It was the universal, shared condition of all human life. Her heart, which had been closed tight with her own sorrow, broke open with a vast, aching compassion for all living beings. She returned to the Buddha, not with a mustard seed, but with this profound, transformative understanding. She had not found a cure for her son's death, but she had found the beginning of a cure for her own suffering. She had turned the dark mud of her personal grief into the luminous lotus of universal wisdom. This story teaches us the sacred alchemy of changing our relationship to our suffering. The default human reaction to pain is to ask the question, "Why is this happening to me?" This question is a trap. It places us in the role of a victim. It implies injustice and unfairness, and it leads only to a closed loop of anger, resentment, and self-pity. There is no satisfactory answer to the question, "Why me?" The transformative practice is to change the question. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" we can learn to ask, "What is this experience trying to teach me?" This new question changes everything. It shifts us from the passive role of a victim to the active role of a student. It presumes that even the most painful experiences contain a hidden lesson, a potential for growth. The pain of a physical illness can teach us the preciousness of health and the importance of being kind to our bodies. The pain of betrayal can teach us the difficult but liberating lessons of forgiveness. The pain of failure can teach us humility and resilience. To engage in this alchemy, we must learn to be with our pain instead of constantly running from it. When a difficult emotion like grief or fear arises, we can practice holding it in our awareness with the same tenderness we would use to hold a crying child. We don't try to fix it or make it go away. We simply offer it the warmth of our mindful, compassionate presence. We breathe into it. We make space for it. We allow it to be. In doing so, we are no longer fueling it with the energy of our resistance. We are applying the gentle, healing balm of our attention. We are tending to the mud, trusting that the lotus is already there, waiting for the right conditions to bloom. And one of the most fundamental conditions of this mud, one of the most powerful sources of our suffering, is the undeniable, relentless truth that all things change. Learning to dance with this truth is the next great step in our journey. Having learned to find nourishment for our spirit in the mud of our own suffering, we unearth a fundamental truth about the nature of that mud, and indeed, about the nature of the lotus flower itself. This truth is one of the cornerstones of Zen wisdom, and it is called impermanence. In the ancient language, the term is anicca. It points to the simple, observable, and inescapable fact that everything changes. Nothing is permanent. Nothing stays the same. The only constant in the entire universe is the law of change itself. Our human hearts, however, are deeply conditioned to resist this truth. We are creatures who crave security and permanence. We want our moments of happiness to last forever. We want our health and strength to be constant. We want the people we love to be with us always. We build our lives as if we are constructing a great stone fortress on solid ground, designed to withstand the tests of time. And yet, the reality of our existence is that we are building a delicate sandcastle next to the ocean. The tide of time is constantly coming in and constantly going out, and our world is forever being reshaped by its rhythmic, relentless flow. A great deal of our suffering in life comes from our protest against this tide. It comes from the shock, the anger, and the grief we feel every time a wave of change washes over our seemingly solid world and proves it to be as transient as our own next breath. This law of impermanence is not a philosophical theory. It is a reality that we can observe at every single level of our existence. On the grandest scale, we see it in the cosmos. Great stars are born in fiery nebulae. They shine for billions of years, and then they die, collapsing into darkness or exploding into new stardust. Mountains are pushed up by tectonic forces and are then slowly, patiently, worn down into dust by wind and rain. Civilizations rise, flourish, and eventually crumble. On the human scale, we see it all around us. The world we were born into, the culture of our youth, its music, its values, its technology, is a world that no longer exists. Our relationships are in constant flow. Friendships deepen or drift apart. Family dynamics shift and evolve. And most intimately, we witness impermanence in our own bodies. The body is our most personal and undeniable teacher of this great law. We see it in the mirror each morning. We feel it in our energy levels, in the new aches and pains that appear. The body we have today is different from the one we had yesterday, and it will be different again tomorrow. It is not a static object, but a continuous process of arising and passing away. And nowhere is this dance of change more rapid or more obvious than in our own minds. Our feelings, as we know, are like the weather, constantly shifting from sunny to cloudy to stormy and back again. Our thoughts are even more ephemeral, like bubbles rising to the surface of a pond, appearing for an instant only to pop and disappear. Because our minds are so conditioned to seek out solidity and permanence, we tend to overlook this constant flow. The practice of mindfulness is the act of intentionally paying attention to the dance of change as it happens, moment by moment. By becoming intimate with impermanence on a small scale, we become less frightened by it on a large scale. You can practice this right now with your own breath. Notice how the in-breath has a distinct beginning, a middle, and an end. Then there is a brief pause, a moment of stillness, before the out-breath begins its own cycle of arising and passing away. The breath is a perfect, miniature model of all of life. It teaches us that letting go is built into the very fabric of existence. The end of the out-breath creates the necessary space for the beginning of the next in-breath. To cling to the breath is to cease to breathe. So it is with life. You can also observe impermanence through the sense of hearing. Sit quietly and just listen to the soundscape around you. Each sound, a bird's song, a passing car, a creak in the house, has a birth, a brief life, and a death. The world of sound is a constant symphony of arising and passing. By listening in this way, you are training your mind to be at ease with the natural, flowing rhythm of life. You are befriending change, rather than seeing it as an enemy. There is a timeless story, told in many traditions, that captures this wisdom perfectly. There was once a great and powerful king who was also a man of deep passions, prone to ecstatic joy in moments of victory and crushing despair in moments of defeat. Weary of this emotional roller coaster, he summoned the wise sages of his kingdom. "I want you to create a ring for me," he commanded. "It must be a magic ring. When I am feeling sad, it must have the power to make me happy. And when I am feeling happy, it must have the power to bring me back to earth and make me serious." The sages were perplexed by this strange request. But finally, a wise and ancient mystic came forward. He presented the king with a simple gold band. The king looked at it, expecting some intricate magical design, but it was plain. Then he saw a tiny inscription on the inside of the ring. He read the words, "This too shall pass." In an instant, he understood its profound magic. From that day on, in moments of great triumph, surrounded by adulation, he would secretly touch the ring. The words would remind him not to become arrogant, not to cling to the moment, for this glory was temporary. And in times of terrible failure or deep grief, when he felt his world was ending, he would touch the ring, and its message would give him the courage to endure, for it reminded him that this pain was also temporary. The ring did not offer him false happiness. It offered him something far more valuable, equanimity. It offered him a constant, quiet reminder of the fundamental truth of existence. Our culture often frames impermanence as a tragedy. We speak of the tragedy of aging or the tragedy of death. But from a Zen perspective, this is a profound misunderstanding. Impermanence is not the enemy of life. It is the very thing that makes life possible. Without impermanence, everything would be static, frozen, and dead. A seed could never become a tree. A caterpillar could never become a butterfly. A child could never grow into an adult. Change is the engine of creation, of growth, of learning. It is because our feelings are impermanent that the pain of grief can eventually soften into a sweet memory. It is because our thoughts are impermanent that we can learn from our mistakes and change our minds. It is because difficult situations are impermanent that we can have hope for a better future. A painful condition is not a life sentence because it too will change. Furthermore, the reality of impermanence is what makes our lives precious. It is the very fact that our time with our loved ones is finite that makes each moment with them so sacred. It is knowing that the beautiful sunset will fade that encourages us to watch it with our full attention and gratitude. We stop taking life for granted. Every ordinary moment becomes a gift, precisely because it will never come again in exactly the same way. When we stop fighting the flow of the river and instead learn to navigate our boat within its current, we find a new kind of stability. Our peace is no longer dependent on things staying the same. Our peace is found in our very ability to adapt, to flow, and to dance with the changing nature of life. The law of impermanence, however, inevitably leads our attention to its most personal, and for many, its most frightening conclusion. If everything that arises must eventually pass away, then this body, this personality, this life that we cherish so dearly, must also pass away. How then do we apply this wisdom to face the ultimate change, our own mortality, not with terror, but with tranquility and grace? As we learn to dance with the rhythm of impermanence, accepting the constant flow of arising and passing away in our lives, we find a new and resilient peace. We find our stability not in resisting the river of change, but in learning to balance ourselves within its current. This practice inevitably guides our attention toward the most profound change of all, the great and final transition that awaits every living being, our own mortality. In our modern Western culture, death is often treated as the ultimate taboo. It is the great enemy, a sign of failure, a topic to be avoided in polite conversation and hidden away behind the sterile walls of hospitals. We use euphemisms like passed away or lost to soften its stark reality. This deep-seated denial, however, does not protect us from death. It only ensures that when it approaches, for ourselves or for those we love, we are unprepared, terrified, and unable to meet it with the grace and wisdom it deserves. The Zen path offers a radically different approach. It suggests that to turn away from death is to turn away from life's most powerful teacher. It invites us to gently, courageously, and mindfully contemplate our own mortality, not to become morbid or depressed, but to become fully, vibrantly, and gratefully alive. The contemplation of our own death is one of the most life-affirming practices we can undertake. It is the great clarifier. When you hold the finite nature of your life in your awareness, the trivial anxieties and petty concerns of the ego begin to lose their power. The desperate need for more wealth, more status, more recognition is exposed as a hollow pursuit. The old grudges you have been nursing for years suddenly seem like a pointless waste of precious energy. The fears that have kept you playing small are revealed to be insignificant in the face of this ultimate truth. Death is the ultimate advisor. It whispers in your ear, "This life is short and precious. Do not waste it." This contemplation is a direct invitation into the heart of the present moment. When we truly understand that our time is not unlimited, we stop postponing our lives. We stop waiting for some future moment to be happy, to be kind, to express our love. We realize that the only time we have is now. A simple and powerful practice is to sit quietly and ask yourself, if I knew for certain that I had only 1 year left to live, how would I live it differently? What would I stop doing? What would I start doing? What conversations would I make sure to have? What would truly matter? This is not an exercise in fantasy. It is an exercise in clarifying your deepest values, so that you can begin to live in alignment with them today, not at some imaginary future time. Our culture's fear of death is rooted in the idea that it is total annihilation, a complete and final end to our existence. The Buddhist understanding offers a more nuanced and gentle perspective, one based on the principle of interconnectedness that we have already explored. It suggests that death is not an endpoint, but a transformation. A helpful metaphor is to think of a cloud in the sky. The cloud exists for a time, beautiful and unique in its form. Then, it changes. It becomes rain. Has the cloud died? Number. It has been transformed. The rain falls to the earth, nourishes a seed, and becomes a flower. The flower is eaten by a deer. The essence of the cloud has not been annihilated. It has continued in new and beautiful forms. So it is with a human life. We are not just this body and this personality. We are a continuation of our parents and our ancestors. We are a manifestation of the food, air, and water we have consumed. And our life, in turn, continues long after our body ceases to function. It continues in our children and grandchildren, who carry our genes and our lessons. It continues in the memories held in the hearts of those who loved us. It continues in the impact of our actions, both skillful and unskillful, which ripple out into the world in ways we can never fully know. It continues in the garden we planted, the knowledge we shared, the kindness we offered to a stranger. From this perspective, death is not a hard stop. It is a dissolution of one temporary form, allowing our energy and our influence to flow back into the great web of life to continue in other forms. For centuries, Zen masters in Japan have engaged in a beautiful practice that demonstrates this peaceful acceptance of mortality. As they felt their life drawing to a close, they would compose a short poem, known as a jisei, or a death poem. These poems are not expressions of fear, regret, or sadness. They are distillations of a lifetime of insight, often marked by a profound sense of peace, gratitude, and even a gentle, cosmic humor. They speak of life and death as natural, inseparable parts of a single process. One master wrote, "Like a dewdrop on a blade of grass, I vanish." Another wrote, "Empty-handed, I came into the world, and empty-handed, I leave it. My coming and going, what are they? A dewdrop on a flash of lightning." These masters did not see death as an enemy to be fought. They saw it as a homecoming, a return to the great source from which they arose. Their lifelong practice of being present with impermanence had prepared them to meet this final change with the same equanimity and grace with which they met every other moment. They could let go of life with the same ease with which they let go of an out-breath, trusting that a new in-breath, in some other form, would follow. We too can prepare for our great journey with this same conscious and loving attention. One of the most compassionate acts we can undertake for ourselves and for our loved ones is the creation of a spiritual will. We are all familiar with a legal will, which is concerned with the distribution of our material possessions. A spiritual will, however, is concerned with the distribution of our deepest heart wisdom. It is a legacy of love. This is not something to be hastily written in a moment of crisis. It is a living document, a reflection to be engaged with over the quiet course of our later years. It is a chance to contemplate and articulate the answers to life's most important questions. You can ask yourself, what are the most vital lessons my life has taught me? What values do I hold most dear? And how have I tried to live them? What forgiveness do I need to offer to others or to myself in order to leave this life with a peaceful heart? What messages of love, gratitude, and encouragement do I want to leave for my children, my grandchildren, and my friends? The act of writing down your reflections on these questions is a profound practice of self-discovery. It clarifies what has truly mattered in your life, and it becomes an incredible gift. It is a final expression of your love that can provide comfort, guidance, and wisdom to your loved ones, long after your physical form has transformed. It is the practice of preparing for a good death, one that is faced consciously, peacefully, and without regret, as the natural culmination of a life well lived. By facing our mortality in this way, we transform it from our greatest fear into our wisest teacher. And this conscious preparation naturally leads us to consider the true nature of what we are leaving behind. It invites us to look beyond our material assets and to see that our most enduring legacy is not what we owned, but who we were. When we contemplate the end of our lives, the question of legacy naturally arises. There is a deep human instinct to want our lives to have mattered, to leave something behind that says, "I was here." In our modern culture, this instinct is often channeled into a narrow and stressful pursuit. We are taught to measure a life's legacy in tangible, monumental terms: the wealth we accumulate for our heirs, the professional accomplishments attached to our name, the physical objects we owned or created. This way of thinking can become a heavy burden, especially in our later years. We might look back and feel a sense of anxiety or disappointment, worrying that we haven't done enough, haven't built enough, haven't saved enough. We become anxious curators of our own museum, fretting over a collection that will inevitably be scattered by the winds of time. But the path of Zen wisdom invites us to set down this heavy burden and to completely redefine our understanding of legacy. It suggests that our true legacy has very little to do with what we leave behind in a material sense. Our true and most powerful legacy is the quality of our presence, the unseen fragrance of our being that lingers in the hearts of others long after we are gone. Think for a moment about the people who have had the most profound and positive impact on your own life. Was it the wealthiest person you knew? Was it the one with the most impressive job title? Or was it, perhaps, a grandparent who had a way of listening that made you feel like you were the only person in the world? Was it a teacher whose patient encouragement gave you confidence? Was it a friend who sat with you in silence through a difficult time, offering not advice, but simply the comfort of their steadfast presence? When we are honest, we realize that the people who have shaped us most deeply did so not through their accomplishments, but through their way of being. We don't remember the details of their bank accounts. We remember the feeling of safety in their company. We don't remember their resume. We remember the warmth of their smile. People remember how we made them feel. This is the core of our true legacy. It is not something we write in a will. It is something we weave into the fabric of every interaction, every day of our lives. It is the sum total of all the moments we chose to be truly present, with an open heart and a listening ear. Imagine a great, ancient tree that has stood in a forest for hundreds of years. One day, after a long and fruitful life, a powerful storm comes and the tree falls. What is its legacy? A narrow, utilitarian view would say its legacy is the timber it provides, the raw material that can be used to build houses or furniture. But this is only a tiny fraction of its true inheritance. The real legacy of the tree is far vaster and more subtle. It is the countless seasons of shade it offered to weary travelers and animals seeking refuge from the sun. It is the immeasurable volume of oxygen it breathed into the atmosphere, purifying the air for all living creatures. It is the shelter it provided for generations of birds who built their nests in its branches, raising their young in its protective embrace. Its legacy is in the way its deep roots held the soil together, preventing erosion and nurturing a whole ecosystem of fungi and insects beneath the ground. The true legacy of the tree was not in its final static form as timber. It was in the dynamic, life-giving quality of its living presence throughout its long and generous life. So it is with us. Our legacy is not what can be measured and tallied at the end. It is the invisible nourishment we provide to the world each day, simply by the quality of our being. It is the shelter we offer through our compassion, the clean air we create with our peaceful mind, the stability we provide with our quiet strength. When we understand this, the pressure to build a great monument to ourselves falls away completely. We realize that we are building our legacy in this very moment, and in the next, and the next. The creation of our legacy is not some future project to worry about. It is a present moment practice to be enjoyed. Every time you listen deeply to a grandchild's story, putting down your phone and giving them your full, undivided attention, you are building your legacy. Every time you feel a wave of irritation or impatience rising, and you choose instead to respond with a moment of quiet understanding, you are building your legacy. Every time you are tempted to judge another person, and you choose instead to offer them a silent wish for their happiness, you are building your legacy. Every time you walk outside and truly notice the beauty of the sky or the resilience of a flower growing in a crack in the pavement, and you allow a feeling of simple gratitude to fill your heart, you are building your legacy. It is not about doing anything grand or heroic. It is about bringing a quality of gentle, mindful, and loving awareness to the small, ordinary moments that make up a life. This is a path of profound relief. It means our worth is not tied to our productivity or our usefulness in the eyes of society. Our worth is inherent in our being. Our capacity to love, to be present, to be kind is always available to us, regardless of our age, our health, or our circumstances. This shift in perspective can lead us to embrace a wonderfully liberating idea: the joy of our own insignificance. The ego is the part of us that desperately wants to be significant, to be special, to be remembered with fanfare. This desire is the source of endless anxiety. It is a heavy weight to carry through life. The spiritual path invites us to gently set this weight down. Embracing our insignificance does not mean our lives are meaningless. It means we are freeing ourselves from the stressful need to be seen as important. It is the freedom of a wildflower that blooms in a remote meadow, not for an audience or for applause, but for the simple, unself-conscious joy of its own blooming. It is the quiet integrity of the person who performs an act of kindness anonymously, not for recognition, but simply because it was the compassionate thing to do. When we let go of the need to build a monument, we are finally free to just live. We can be more authentic, more playful, more humble. We can act from a place of love rather than a place of ambition. And the beautiful paradox is that in embracing our simple, unadorned existence, we end up creating the most beautiful and enduring legacy of all. It is a legacy of peace, of love, of kindness that ripples out from our quiet presence and touches the world in ways we can never fully see or measure. To live in this way, to offer our presence so fully to the world, requires a deep well of inner wisdom. This wisdom is often not found in complex ideas or eloquent words. It is found in a place beyond language, in the profound and fertile ground of silence. Our journey has led us to a place of profound reevaluation. We have begun to understand that our true legacy is not a monument we build, but the quiet fragrance of our presence we leave in the hearts of others. To cultivate such a presence, one of peace, kindness, and authenticity, requires a wisdom that runs deeper than cleverness or intellect. This wisdom is not found in books, nor is it contained in eloquent speeches. It arises from a source that our modern world has taught us to fear and avoid at all costs: silence. We live in an age of unprecedented noise. It is not merely the audible noise of traffic, construction, and media, but a relentless internal noise as well. Our minds are saturated. From the moment we wake, we are bombarded with a constant stream of information, opinions, advertisements, and anxieties. We scroll through news feeds, listen to podcasts, check emails, and engage in endless inner monologues of planning, judging, and worrying. Our minds are like a pond on a windy day, its surface constantly agitated, its waters so murky and stirred up that we can never see what lies on the bottom. We have become addicted to this input, to this mental weather, and we have become deeply afraid of what might happen if it all were to stop. We fear that in the silence, we will find only a boring, empty void. The wisdom of Zen, however, tells us that the opposite is true. The silence is not empty, it is full. It is the very ground from which true understanding can grow. We must first distinguish between two kinds of knowing. The first, and the one our society values most highly, is conceptual knowledge. This is the knowledge of the intellect. It is acquired through words, through logic, through reading and analysis. It is the knowledge that can name all the parts of a flower, classify its species, and describe the process of photosynthesis. This kind of knowledge is incredibly useful and necessary for navigating the practical aspects of our world, but it has a fundamental limitation. It can give you a perfect description of a mango, its color, its texture, its chemical composition, but it can never give you the actual experience of tasting the mango. The second kind of knowing is intuitive wisdom. In Sanskrit, this is called prajna. This is not a thinking process. It is a direct, unmediated seeing into the nature of reality. It is the aha, moment of sudden insight, the deep gut feeling that guides you, the flash of creative inspiration that seems to come from nowhere. Prajna is not thinking about the flower. It is the silent, direct experience of the flower in its pure, unadorned suchness. Conceptual knowledge is a map. Prajna is the actual territory. While the map is useful, We too often spend our entire lives studying the map, arguing about the map, and completely forgetting to ever step out and experience the territory for ourselves. The noise of the analytical mind keeps us trapped in the map. The practice of silence is the act of setting the map aside and daring to experience the world directly. The cultivation of silence, therefore, is a central practice on the path to wisdom. It is about intentionally creating islands of stillness in the midst of our noisy lives. This can begin with external silence. You might choose to create a digital sunset in your home, a time in the evening, perhaps an hour before bed, when all screens, the television, the computer, the phone are turned off. This allows the nervous system to settle and the mind to quiet down from the day's constant stimulation. You might take a silent walk in nature, consciously leaving your headphones behind. And instead of being lost in a podcast or music, you simply listen to the sounds of the world around you. Or you might dedicate the first 20 minutes of your morning to silence. Instead of immediately turning on the news, you can simply sit with a cup of tea, watch the light enter the room, and allow yourself to gently arrive into the new day without the immediate assault of the world's problems. These periods of external silence are the training ground for cultivating a deeper, internal silence. Even in a perfectly quiet room, the mind can still be shouting. The practice of internal silence is not about trying to force the mind to stop thinking. That is impossible and only creates more struggle. It is, rather, the gentle art of withdrawing your investment in the noise. It is letting thoughts arise and pass without grabbing onto them, without feeding them with your attention, without spinning them into elaborate stories. It is resting your awareness in the quiet space that lies behind the thoughts. It is like learning to become the vast, silent sky and allowing the thoughts to be nothing more than clouds drifting by, without being disturbed by them. There is a legendary story that points to the very heart of this silent wisdom. It is said that one day, the Buddha was sitting with his disciples on a mountain called Vulture Peak. A great crowd had assembled, eagerly anticipating a profound teaching, a sermon filled with deep and complex ideas. There was a palpable sense of expectation in the air. The Buddha, however, did not speak. He simply sat in silence. Then, slowly, he reached out and held up a single, beautiful flower. He presented it to the assembly, turning it gently in his fingers. The crowd was baffled. They stared at the flower, and their minds raced. What did it mean? Was it a symbol for beauty, for impermanence? Was it a riddle they were supposed to solve? Their intellects were working furiously, trying to grasp the teaching, to put it into a conceptual box. But as the Buddha looked out over the crowd, he saw that one of his disciples, a monk named Mahakashyapa, was not trying to figure anything out. He was simply gazing at the flower, and a slow, beatific smile spread across his face. In that moment of shared silence, he understood. Seeing this, the Buddha finally spoke. He said, "I possess the treasury of the true Dharma I, the wondrous mind of nirvana. Today, I transmit it directly to Mahakashyapa." This silent sermon is considered the legendary origin of the entire Zen tradition. Its meaning is clear and profound. The deepest truth cannot be contained in words or concepts. It cannot be figured out by the intellect. It can only be realized directly, in a moment of pure, unmediated, silent perception. When we dare to enter this silence, when we allow the frantic, chattering mind to settle, something extraordinary happens. We begin to experience the world not as a collection of labels and judgments, but as a living, breathing miracle. A tree is no longer just the word tree. It becomes a majestic, vibrant presence. The taste of water becomes a cool, clear blessing. We stop living in a world of second-hand descriptions and start living in the world of first-hand reality. It is in this silence that the answers to our deepest questions often arise. We may have been wrestling with a difficult decision for weeks, analyzing it from every possible angle, making lists of pros and cons, and only getting more confused. Then, when we finally let go of the struggle, when we sit in silence and allow the mind to become still, the right path often becomes clear. It doesn't appear as a logical argument, but as a quiet, intuitive knowing, a sense of rightness that arises from a place much deeper than thought. This silence is not empty or dead. It is pregnant with a quiet, alert, and peaceful presence. It is our true home, the ground of our being, a sanctuary to which we can always return. And this deep inner stillness is not a retreat from the world. It is not a passive state of inaction. On the contrary, it is the very source from which the most powerful, graceful, and skillful action can arise. When we learn to act from this place of quiet clarity, our engagement with the world is transformed. Our actions become less driven by anxiety and more aligned with a deep and effortless wisdom. The deep, resonant silence we cultivate within is not an end in itself. It is not a retreat from the world into a state of permanent inaction. On the contrary, this inner stillness is the fertile ground from which a new, more graceful and effective way of engaging with the world can emerge. When our actions are no longer driven by the noisy, anxious chatter of the ego, they begin to flow from a place of deep intuition and clarity. Here, the wisdom of Zen finds a beautiful harmony with a central concept from the ancient philosophy of Taoism, the principle of Wu Wei. Literally translated, Wu Wei means non-doing or non-action, but this translation can be misleading. It does not mean to be passive, lazy, or inert. A more accurate understanding of Wu Wei is effortless action, or action that does not involve struggle. It is the art of moving with the grain of things, of acting in harmony with the natural flow of life, rather than struggling against it. Imagine two people rowing a boat down a river. The first person, a novice, fights the river. They paddle frantically, trying to force the boat forward through sheer muscular effort. They splash, they strain, they grow exhausted, and they make slow, awkward progress. They are working against the river. The second person is a master who embodies the spirit of Wu Wei. They have spent years observing the river, and they understand its nature intimately. They see the hidden currents, the eddies, the places where the water runs fastest. They do not fight the river, they join it. They place their oar in the water at just the right moment, at just the right angle, and the power of the river itself does most of the work, carrying the boat swiftly and gracefully downstream. From the outside, it looks as though the master is doing very little. Their movements are minimal, calm, and efficient. This is Wu Wei. It is not inaction. It is the highest form of skillful, intelligent, and effective action, one that arises from a deep understanding of and trust in the way things are. For much of our lives, especially in a culture that celebrates ambition and tireless effort, we are conditioned to be the first boatman. We live in a state of constant striving. Striving is the energy of the ego. It is fueled by a sense of lack, by the belief that we are not enough, that our lives are not enough, and that we must force, wrestle, and conquer reality to get what we want. Striving is the energy of the clenched fist, the furrowed brow, the tense shoulders. It is the oak tree standing rigid against the storm, determined to impose its will upon the wind. While this energy may have served us in building a career or raising a family, if we continue to rely on it in our later years, it leads only to exhaustion, frustration, and a sense of fighting a losing battle against the natural changes of life. The journey into our 60s and beyond is a sacred invitation from life itself to shift from this mode of striving to a mode of allowing. Allowing is the energy of Wu Wei. It is not about giving up. It is about giving over. It is giving over to a wisdom deeper than the ego's frantic plans. Allowing begins with the clear-eyed acceptance of reality as it is, and then responding to that reality with intuitive skill. It is the energy of the open hand, the calm mind. It is the willow tree that bends with the wind and, by yielding, remains whole. The greatest teacher of Wu Wei in the natural world is water. The ancient Taoist sages revered water as the ultimate embodiment of this principle. Water is, by its nature, soft and yielding. You cannot punch it or grasp it. Yet, with gentle, patient persistence, it can wear away the hardest stone. It does not attack the rock. It simply flows around it, over it, through it, finding the path of least resistance, until the rock itself is changed. Water always seeks the lowest, most humble ground. It does not strive to be at the top, to be seen, to be celebrated, and yet, in its humility, it gathers in great lakes and vast oceans, becoming powerful and life-giving. It nourishes all of creation, from the smallest blade of grass to the largest tree, without asking for anything in return, without seeking credit for its work. It acts from its own innate nature, with effortless generosity. To live with the wisdom of Wu Wei is to become like water, It is to let go of brittle, forceful, ego-driven action and to adopt a more fluid, patient, and humble way of being. It is to understand that true strength lies not in rigidity, but in resilience and the ability to adapt. We can apply this principle to every aspect of our daily lives. Consider a simple task like gardening. A gardener who strives may try to force nature into submission. They might impose rigid, straight lines, use harsh chemical fertilizers to compel growth, and constantly battle against weeds and insects. Their gardening is a form of warfare. A gardener who practices Wu Wei, however, works in partnership with nature. They take time to understand the soil, the quality of the light, the needs of the plants. They coax the garden into being, planting companions that help each other thrive, and creating a space that is a harmonious blend of their intention and nature's own wisdom. Their gardening is a form of dance. This same principle can be revolutionary in our relationships. So much of our interpersonal suffering comes from striving from the relentless and ultimately futile project of trying to change other people. We have a mental blueprint of how our spouse, our children, or our friends should be, and we spend our energy trying to edit them, correct them, and fix them. This is the source of endless nagging, arguing, and resentment. Wu Wei in relationships is the radical act of letting go of this project. It is the practice of accepting people as they are, right now, in this moment. This does not mean we condone harmful behavior. It means we stop our internal war against their reality. We focus on understanding them deeply, on listening to them without an agenda, and on responding to the person who is actually in front of us, not the person we wish they were. When we stop trying to control others, a space of trust and authentic connection can open up, a space where real love, not a battle of wills, can flourish. To live in the spirit of Wu Wei is to live in a state of trust. It is a trust in the natural unfolding of life, and a trust in our own intuitive ability to respond skillfully to whatever arises. We let go of the need to have everything figured out, to control every outcome. We act with clarity and intention, and then we let go of the results, allowing life to flow as it will. This is the art of acting from a place of deep inner quiet, rather than from a place of anxious calculation. And when we learn to move in this way, in harmony with the great current of life, something remarkable happens. We stop wasting our energy fighting ourselves and the world. We feel a new sense of ease, grace, and effectiveness. By letting go of the struggle to become the person we think we ought to be, we begin to effortlessly align with the person we truly are, at our deepest core. This natural, unforced way of being is the most direct path to discovering our own inherent purpose, a purpose that does not need to be chased or manufactured, but simply allowed to blossom. As we learn to move through the world with the effortless grace of Wu Wei, acting in harmony with the natural flow of life, a new sense of ease and rightness begins to permeate our being. We are no longer fighting the river, we are flowing with it. This profound shift naturally leads us to re-examine one of the most fundamental questions that arises when the primary activities of our life, our career, the raising of our children, have come to an end. In the quiet that follows, a persistent question can echo in the mind. What is my purpose now? Our society provides a very narrow and often unforgiving definition of purpose. It is almost always equated with productivity, with achievement, with climbing a ladder of success. Our purpose, we are taught, is our job title, our income level, our ability to produce and contribute in a tangible, measurable way. And so, when the job ends, when the so-called race is over, it is natural to feel a sense of disorientation, a feeling that our purpose has been stripped away from us. We may feel we have been put on a shelf, that our useful life is over. This is a painful and deeply flawed way of seeing, one that causes unnecessary suffering. The wisdom of the Zen path invites us to a radical and liberating redefinition of purpose, one that shifts it from something we do on the outside to something we cultivate on the inside. For most of our lives, our sense of purpose was tied to a future goal. The purpose of studying was to get a good job. The purpose of working hard was to get a promotion or to provide for our family. The purpose was always just around the corner, a destination we were striving to reach. This way of living, while it can be effective for achieving external goals, has a hidden cost. It subtly teaches us that the present moment is merely a means to an end, a stepping stone to a more important future. We are always living for later, and our sense of worth is conditional upon reaching the next milestone. But what happens when there are no more mountains to climb, no more promotions to chase? The spiritual path suggests that this is not an end, but a glorious beginning. It is the opportunity to discover a purpose that is not dependent on any future outcome, a purpose that can be found fully and completely in the here and now. This is the great shift from a purpose of doing to a purpose of being. For decades, your worth was measured by what you did. Now, you have the sacred opportunity to discover the immense value of who you are simply being. What does this mean? It means recognizing that to be a calm, non-anxious, and loving presence in the world is a purpose of the highest order. In a world that is so often frantic, angry, and fearful, to embody peace is an act of profound service. To be the grandparent who has the time to listen deeply, without judgment or impatience, to a grandchild's rambling story is a gift of immeasurable value. To be the neighbor who offers a genuine smile and a moment of friendly connection is to weave a thread of light into the fabric of your community. To be the friend who can sit in comfortable silence with another, holding their joy or their sorrow with quiet, steady compassion, is to be a sanctuary. This purpose of being is not passive. It is an active cultivation of inner qualities. It is the work of tending to the garden of your own mind and heart, so that the fruits of peace, kindness, and wisdom can be shared effortlessly and naturally with everyone you meet. This purpose cannot be put on a resume. It cannot be measured in dollars, but its impact, its legacy, is deep and real. It is the quiet healing you bring to the world, simply by the quality of your own presence. There is a story of a great official in ancient China who had spent his entire life in service to the emperor. He was a man of immense power and responsibility, whose decisions affected the lives of thousands. His days were filled with meetings, strategies, and the constant pressure of state affairs. This was his purpose, his identity. When he finally reached the age of retirement, he felt a profound sense of emptiness. He returned to his ancestral home, a beautiful estate with a large garden, but he felt lost. Without his title, without his duties, he felt he was nothing. He wandered his garden for weeks, a ghost in his own life. One afternoon, his attention was drawn to a single, scraggly azalea bush in a neglected corner of the garden. It looked unhealthy and sad. On a whim, he decided he would try to nurse it back to health. His new purpose began. He learned about the proper soil, about the right amount of sunlight and water. He learned how to carefully prune the dead branches to encourage new growth. His vast world, which had once revolved around the affairs of an entire empire, now contracted to the small, intimate world of this single plant. Day after day, he tended to it with his full attention and care. And as the bush began to recover, as new leaves unfurled and buds began to form, he felt a new kind of joy blooming in his own heart. It was not the triumphant, ego-driven satisfaction of his old life. It was a quiet, deep, and steady contentment. In the simple, present-moment act of nurturing this one small part of the world, he had found a purpose more profound and satisfying than all his years of running an empire. This shift to a purpose of being does not mean we stop doing. It means our doing is now motivated by intrinsic joy rather than external validation. The later years of life are a perfect time for play, for curiosity, for rediscovering the person you were before the race began. Think back to your childhood or your youth. What did you love to do simply for the love of doing it? Perhaps it was painting, playing a musical instrument, writing stories, woodworking, or spending time in nature. The busy years of adult life often force us to set these passions aside. Now is the time to invite them back. The key is to engage with them from a new perspective. You are not trying to become a professional artist or a concert pianist. You are letting go of the need for the outcome to be perfect or to win applause. You are simply immersing yourself in the joyful process itself. You are doing it for you. This is also a wonderful time to learn something new, just for the sake of expanding your mind and spirit. You could learn a new language, take a class on astronomy, learn to cook a new cuisine, or join a choir. This kind of learning keeps the mind supple and open, and it connects us with new people and new ideas, not for career advancement, but for the simple delight of discovery. Ultimately, as we travel further along this path, we may come to see that all these forms of purpose, the purpose of being, the purpose of joyful engagement, are expressions of one ultimate purpose. From the perspective of Zen, the deepest purpose of a human life is to awaken, to see and realize the truth of your own nature and the nature of reality. It is to answer the great question, who am I? Not with a thought, but with your entire being. But this, too, is not a future destination to be achieved. The ultimate purpose is not to become a Buddha. The purpose is found in the very act of walking the path. Every single step is the purpose. Every mindful breath, every moment of choosing kindness over anger, every compassionate act, every flash of insight into the nature of impermanence, each of these is a perfect fulfillment of your life's deepest purpose. When we understand this, the anxiety about finding my purpose dissolves. Our purpose is not lost. It is here, now, in this very moment. It is the simple, sacred task of being present for our own life. And when our purpose is sourced from this deep, internal wellspring, it gives rise to a form of happiness that is not dependent on pleasure or pain, a happiness that is both resilient and profound. As we learn to live from a place of effortless action, aligning ourselves with the natural flow of life, we discover a purpose that is not tied to any external achievement. It is a purpose found in the quality of our being, in the kindness and awareness we bring to each moment. This inner-sourced purpose is the foundation for a different kind of happiness, one that is far more resilient, stable, and profound than the fleeting pleasures the world typically offers. All human beings seek happiness. It is the great, motivating force behind nearly everything we do. We arrange our lives, our careers, our relationships, all in the hope that they will lead us to a state of well-being and contentment. Yet, for so many, lasting happiness remains an elusive prize. We catch glimpses of it, we hold it for a moment, and then, like water slipping through our fingers, it is gone. We are left feeling thirsty again, wondering why a state we desire so deeply is so difficult to maintain. The wisdom of the spiritual path suggests a simple reason for this struggle. We have been looking for happiness in the wrong place, because we have fundamentally misunderstood its nature. Our culture has taught us to equate happiness with pleasure. It is the thrill we get from a new experience, the satisfaction of a desire being met, the enjoyment of a delicious meal, the excitement of a new purchase, or the warmth of receiving praise. Let us call this conditional happiness, because it is entirely conditional upon external events and stimuli. There is nothing wrong with these pleasures. They are a part of life to be enjoyed. But to build our life's hope for happiness upon them is to build our house on sand. A happiness based on pleasure is like trying to fill a leaky cup. The pleasure, like water, can be wonderful as it is pouring in. But the cup of our mind has holes in it, the holes of impermanence, of changing tastes, of insatiable desire. The water quickly drains away, leaving the cup empty, leaving us feeling a sense of lack and needing another hit of pleasure to feel good again. This creates a relentless cycle of seeking and dissatisfaction, a hedonic treadmill where we are always running after the next pleasant experience just to feel okay. This conditional happiness is, by its very nature, fragile, temporary, and ultimately, a source of underlying stress. There is, however, another kind of happiness. The Buddhist tradition calls it sukha. This is not a fleeting emotion, but a deep and abiding state of well-being that arises from within. This is unconditional happiness. It is not dependent on whether life is going our way or whether we are experiencing pleasure. It is a profound sense of inner peace, balance, and contentment that remains steady even when the weather of our life becomes stormy. If conditional happiness is like trying to fill a leaky cup from the outside, sukha is like digging a well. The work is not in adding something from the outside, but in removing the layers of dirt and rock, the layers of ignorance, attachment, and aversion that are covering the cool, fresh, life-giving water that is already there, deep within us. This true happiness is not something we chase. It is something we uncover. It is our natural state. So, what are the practices that help us remove this debris and uncover the wellspring of our own inner peace? They are the very practices we have been exploring on this journey. True happiness, or sukha, is the natural result of cultivating three essential qualities. The first is wisdom, prajna, the clear seeing of reality as it is. When we understand the truths of impermanence, interconnectedness, and the illusory nature of the separate self, our minds are freed from the grip of fear, confusion, and anxiety. We stop struggling against life, and this cessation of struggle is a primary source of peace. The second ingredient is ethical living, sila, living a life guided by compassion, kindness, and harmlessness. When our actions, words, and thoughts are aligned with our deepest heart values, our mind becomes serene. It is not disturbed by the inner turmoil of guilt, remorse, or conflict. We can rest with a clear conscience, and this is a profound form of happiness. The third ingredient is mental discipline, samadhi, the ability to steady the mind, to rest in the present moment, and to not be hijacked by every passing thought and emotion. A stable mind is a peaceful mind. Our entire journey of practicing mindfulness, of letting go, of cultivating compassion and finding purpose in being has been the very process of digging this well, of cultivating the conditions for this deep, unconditional happiness to emerge. There is an old story of a very wealthy merchant who had everything a person could possibly desire. He lived in a grand palace, wore the finest silks, ate the most exotic foods, and was surrounded by servants who catered to his every whim. Yet, despite all his external riches, he was plagued by a deep and persistent unhappiness, a sense of emptiness that no purchase could fill. He heard stories of a simple monk who lived in a cave outside the city, owning nothing but a single robe and a begging bowl, who was said to be the most joyful man in the kingdom. Driven by curiosity and despair, the merchant went to find him. He found the monk sitting peacefully at the mouth of his cave, his face radiant with a serene contentment. The rich man, bewildered, asked him, "Master, how can you possibly be so happy? You have absolutely nothing." The monk smiled with great kindness and replied, "That is where you are mistaken. Our situations are the reverse of what they appear. You believe that happiness is found by adding things to your life. You spend all your days trying to fill a cup that has no bottom. I have discovered that true happiness is found by subtracting the things that obscure it. I subtract craving, I subtract ill will, I subtract confusion. You seek a happiness that depends entirely on the world outside of you, a world that is constantly changing and can never be controlled. My happiness depends only on the quality of my own mind. That is why, in truth, you are the poor one, and I am the rich one." This story points us to the heart of the matter. A happiness that is dependent on pleasure is incredibly vulnerable, especially as we navigate the realities of our later years. Our health may decline, our financial security may become precarious, we lose friends and partners, we may no longer have the physical ability to do the things that once brought us pleasure. If our happiness is attached to these external conditions, then life will inevitably become a source of increasing sorrow and disappointment. But sukha, this deep, unconditional well-being, is different. It is a portable peace that we carry within us. Because it arises from our inner cultivation of wisdom and compassion, it cannot be taken away by a doctor's report, a fluctuating stock market, or the grief of loss. This does not mean we will no longer feel pain or sadness. We will, but we can learn to hold that pain within a larger container of peace. We can meet our grief with a compassionate heart. We can face our physical challenges with a mind that is not at war with reality. This is the unshakable contentment of a mind that has found its way home. This true happiness is not a state of manic excitement or giddy bliss. In fact, its most prominent characteristic is a profound and satisfying peace. It is the quiet joy of being fundamentally okay, regardless of life's passing storms. This deep inner settlement, this state of being at peace with what is, has a name. It is the dawn of inner liberation. The path we have been walking together, a path of cultivating presence, acceptance, compassion, and wisdom, leads to a profound destination. Yet, this destination is not a faraway place, not a future paradise to be attained after a lifetime of striving. It is a state of being, a quality of mind that is available to us right here, in this very life, in this very moment. This state is known as inner liberation. It is the ultimate fruit of the spiritual journey, the peace that the human heart has been seeking through all its wanderings. In the Buddhist tradition, this is the true meaning of nirvana, not a heavenly realm, but the complete and utter cessation of our inner suffering. It is the end of our self-created exile and the great homecoming to our true nature. To understand liberation, it is best to first understand what it is we are being liberated from. The ordinary, untrained human mind is in a near constant state of civil war. It is a battlefield where our desires are perpetually at war with reality. We want pleasure to last, but it is impermanent. We want to avoid pain, but it is an inevitable part of life. We want those we love to stay with us forever, but they too are subject to change and loss. We want to be praised, but we are met with criticism. We want to feel secure, but we live in a world of uncertainty. This constant friction between what I want and what is the fundamental source of all our stress, our anxiety, our anger, and our discontent. It is the engine of dukkha, of suffering. We spend our lives engaged in this exhausting internal conflict, trying to manipulate the world to match our preferences, and feeling frustrated and defeated when it refuses to comply. Inner liberation is the unconditional ceasefire in this war. It is not that we suddenly gain the power to make the world conform to all our wishes. It is that we have cultivated such deep wisdom and acceptance that the mind simply stops fighting reality. The war is over because one Cicerone-egoic resistance has laid down its arms. It is a state of profound peace that comes not from winning the battle, but from realizing there was never a need to fight in the first place. A beautiful and powerful metaphor for the liberated mind is that of a deep mountain lake. On some days, the weather is calm, the air is still, and the surface of the lake is like a perfect mirror, reflecting the blue sky and the passing clouds with flawless clarity. This is like the mind experiencing pleasant and peaceful conditions. It is calm, open, and bright. On other days, a great storm sweeps through the valley. The wind howls, the rain lashes down, and the surface of the lake is churned into violent, chaotic waves. The placid mirror is gone, replaced by an image of turmoil. This is like the mind experiencing the inevitable difficulties of life, grief, illness, loss, or fear. To an observer on the shore, the entire lake appears to be in a state of chaos. But this is the essential point. If you could sink down beneath the turbulent surface, down 50 feet, down 100 feet, into the great, silent depths of the lake, you would find a place of absolute stillness. The storm raging on the surface has no effect on the profound tranquility of the depths. The liberated mind is like this deep lake. The surface of our lives will always be subject to the changing weather of fortune and misfortune. We will still experience gain and loss, praise and blame, pleasure and pain. The waves will still arise. However, we are no longer identified with the waves. We are no longer a small boat being tossed about by the storm. Our center of being has sunk down into the vast, quiet, unshakable peace of the depths. We can watch the storm on the surface with a compassionate and steady awareness, knowing that our true nature, our deep inner refuge, is always untouched, always serene. This state of profound equanimity is not a magical gift bestowed upon a chosen few. It is the natural and organic result of all the patient work we have done on this journey. It is the lotus flower that blooms, not through force, but because the conditions of the mud and water are right. The practice of mindfulness has taught us to be present with the waves on the surface without being swept away by them. The practice of acceptance has taught us to stop resisting the wind and the rain. The art of letting go has untied the ropes of attachment that kept our boat tethered to the shore of our desires. The wisdom of no self has helped us realize that we are not the small, fragile boat, but the vast, deep water itself. The cultivation of compassion has filled our hearts with a gentle kindness for the entire, stormy process of life. And the understanding of impermanence has taught us that every storm, no matter how fierce, will eventually pass. Liberation is not another peak to be conquered through striving. It is the ground of our own being to which we naturally settle once the winds of craving, aversion, and ignorance have been allowed to quiet down. It is a return to who we have always been beneath the surface-level noise. When the mind abides in this state of liberation, its qualities are transformed. It is characterized by a deep and unwavering equanimity, the quality of the deep lake, able to meet both joy and sorrow with a balanced and open heart. Our actions become more spontaneous and skillful, no longer driven by anxious planning or fearful reactivity, They arise naturally from the clear, silent wisdom of the present moment. A perfect expression of Wu Wei. A profound fearlessness emerges. When we are no longer identified with this small, temporary body and personality, the fear of insult, the fear of failure, and even the fear of death lose their terrifying power. We know that our true nature is something far vaster and more enduring than this fleeting form. Our compassion becomes boundless. With no ego wall to defend, the heart is completely open and responds to the suffering it encounters with an effortless, unconditional love. And finally, there is a quiet and abiding joy. It is not the loud, giddy excitement of pleasure. It is a subtle, background hum of well-being, a deep contentment with the simple miracle of existence itself. It is the peace that surpasses all our attempts to understand it with the logical mind. It is a peace that must be felt, that must be lived. It is a state of being so deeply at rest with the totality of life that even our most unconscious and vulnerable activity, the act of sleep, is itself transformed. When the mind is no longer at war with itself during the day, it can surrender to the darkness of the night without fear, carrying its profound peace into the very heart of our dreams. As our time together draws to its natural conclusion, we arrive at the final gate of understanding, where the act of sleeping transforms from a nightly necessity into a profound spiritual practice and a metaphor for the highest state of being. For so many, the bed is not a sanctuary of peace, but another battlefield. The body craves rest, but the mind refuses to surrender. It races with the anxieties of tomorrow, replays the regrets of yesterday, and churns with an endless stream of thoughts, plans, and worries. Sleep, when it comes, is often shallow, fragmented, and haunted by restless dreams. It is a temporary ceasefire, not a true and lasting peace. The body rests, but the soul remains in turmoil, waking to a new day feeling just as weary as when it lay down. However, when the mind has been gently trained through the practices we have explored, through mindfulness of the breath, through the cultivation of compassion, and through the wisdom of letting go, experience of falling asleep is utterly transformed. It becomes a conscious and sacred act of release. As you prepare for sleep, you can intentionally, lovingly, set down every burden. You can let go of your identity as a parent, a professional, a success, a failure. You can release the projects you are planning, the conversations you are rehearsing, the problems you are trying to solve. One by one, you place them down outside the door of your consciousness, trusting that they will be there in the morning if they are needed. You are not running from them. You are wisely choosing not to carry them into the sacred domain of rest. And in this act of complete surrender, sleep ceases to be a battle to be won. It arises naturally, like a deep and gentle tide, washing over you, cleansing you, and carrying you into a state of profound, silent, and truly restorative peace. Yet, sleeping in inner liberation is more than just a good night's sleep. It is a powerful metaphor for an entirely new way of living your waking life. To live as if you are in a peaceful sleep means to move through your days without the constant inner friction of fear, resistance, and struggle. Imagine the trust of a deep sleeper. They do not fight the darkness or question the silence. They are in a state of absolute surrender, resting in what is. To live with this quality of being is to trust the flow of life itself. Challenges will still arise, joys will still blossom, the winds of change will still blow. But you are no longer fighting the current. You are no longer bracing against every wave. You are resting in the river of life, allowing it to carry you with a sense of ease and grace. Your mind is no longer at war with reality, and in that inner armistice, you discover a peace that does not depend on external conditions. This state is the grand unification of what we perceive as opposites. It is the perfect harmony of action and rest. Your body can be fully engaged in the activities of the day, working, walking, talking, but your mind, your core being, remains in a state of profound rest. The inner stillness is so deep that the outer movements of life no longer disturb it. It is the union of life and silence. You are more alive than ever before, experiencing the richness of each moment with heightened senses and an open heart, yet you are simultaneously rooted in a silence that is deeper than any sound. This is the state of ultimate fulfillment. It is not about grasping for more, but about realizing the inherent wholeness and completeness of your own being, right here and now. There is no more poignant image of this ultimate rest than the traditional depiction of the Buddha as he enters his final nirvana, or parinirvana. At the end of a long and fruitful life of teaching, having offered his wisdom to the world, he lies down between two trees. He rests on his right side, his head supported by his hand, his expression one of perfect serenity and peace. To the unenlightened eye, this is a death, a moment of sorrow and loss. But from the perspective of wisdom, it is the great rest. It is the final and complete blowing out of the flames of desire, aversion, and delusion. His mission is complete. All karmic tides have ceased. There is nothing left to do, nowhere else to go, no one left to become. It is the ultimate act of letting go, the final, peaceful surrender into the unconditioned. While we are not the Buddha, every time we consciously let go and fall into a truly peaceful sleep, we are touching a small fragment of that same profound liberation. Every night offers us a chance to rehearse this final, fearless release, to experience a small taste of the great, eternal rest. Looking back upon the path we have walked together, we began by bravely confronting the accumulated weight of a lifetime, the burdens of age, the ghosts of the past, the anxieties for the future. We did not turn away. Instead, we learned to use the simple, powerful tools of mindfulness and acceptance. We learned that our breath could be an anchor in any storm, and that letting go was not an act of weakness, but of profound strength. We journeyed inward to explore the true nature of ourself, of our suffering, and of our happiness, discovering that they were not solid, permanent things, but fluid, changing processes. It has been a journey from the constricting darkness of clinging and fear into the expansive light of understanding and freedom. The most vital message to carry forward from our time together is this: peace is not something you find, build, or achieve. It is something you return to. It is your inherent nature, your birthright, which has always been present beneath the turbulent layers of thought and worry. And the period of life after 60 should not be seen as a sunset, the twilight of our years. It is, in fact, the dawn of a different, more profound kind of wisdom, the wisdom of stillness, of being, of fulfillment. To sleep in inner liberation is nothing more and nothing less than to live each day with this quiet trust in the unfolding of life, to rest in the knowledge that you are already whole and complete. Let this understanding leave you with a deep and abiding sense of hope and self-reliance. This journey does not require a pilgrimage to a distant temple or the guidance of an external master. It begins right here, with a single conscious breath, with a single moment of choosing to pause instead of react. The profound wisdom of Zen is not a dogma to be believed, but a gentle, open-handed invitation. It is an invitation to come home to the truth of who you are, and to discover the unshakable, eternal peace that has been patiently waiting for you all along.